This anime starts with an ugly loser masochistic mage who was given a last chance to live. He tried to fight using his weak magic, but everyone just laughed at him. In this world, being born into the right family, having natural talent, and working hard are what really matter to become a powerful magician. Sadly, no matter how much he tried, he couldn't make up for not being naturally talented. The noble told him magic would never work for him, and with a real magic spell, he ended his life faster than your father who left you. As he burned, he couldn't help but admire the spell, seeing it as something beautiful that only nobles could do. His dying wish was just to know more about magic, even if he couldn't use it well himself. But as he thought it was all over, he suddenly woke up surrounded by huge giants. Scared, he tried to defend himself with a tiny fireball. But surprisingly, even with tiny hands, his fireball attack managed to work. Outside, there was a huge celebration as it was announced that the 7th prince of the Salon Kingdom had been born. Our ugly loser had been reborn as Prince Lloyd, and everyone was shocked to see the damage the little baby's fireball had caused. Years later, Lloyd had grown a bit, but he's currently hiding from his maids. A knight then invites him to go on a raid, but he was too busy trying to escape from the maids. The knights then decided to leave him be, as unfortunately, being much younger than his brothers, Lloyd was out of contention for the crown. One of the knights didn't think it was worth gaining the kid's favor, but the other knight disagreed strongly. He believed Lloyd was amazing, as he was able to speak shortly after birth, and he preferred spell books instead of picture books. He also refused to drink milk straight from Mount Everest itself, like a true gentleman. But most importantly, this knight believed Lloyd might be the reincarnation of the great mage known as William Bordeaux, the father of sorcery. Lloyd confirmed that he was indeed reborn, although he was just a commoner in his past life. He had no clue why he was reborn into the privileged position of the 7th son of the royal family. Regardless, Lloyd didn't care about standing or glory. He followed the same philosophy he had in his past life. Discovering the wonders of magic in the world was all that mattered to him. In his new life, Lloyd is granted access to a vast library, perfect to immerse himself in. However, his studies are interrupted by Silpha, his teacher, who challenges him to a sparring match. However, Lloyd doubted the necessity of swordsmanship since he's not in line for the throne. But Silpha insists that royal succession isn't everything and reminds him of her duty to educate him. Lloyd realizes that the practice won't stop until he puts up a good fight, so he engages with more determination. Using his control-type magic, Lloyd secretly traces Silpha's moves, essentially fighting her with her own techniques. Despite his cheating, Lloyd recognizes Silpha's superiority in strength, stamina, and height. He decides to experiment using a physical enhancement and levitation spell to level the playing field. With a combination of physical attacks and magic, Lloyd fights more evenly. As the battle intensifies, Lloyd grows confident, believing he can win by making one different move. Releasing his trace spell, Lloyd surprises Silpha with an unexpected maneuver. However, she blocks the attack and reveals she knew he was cheating all along. She points out his use of levitation to compensate for his height disadvantage and even grow in his wooden sword. Exhausted, Lloyd apologizes for ending the fight abruptly, eager to return to his books. Though surprised by Silpha's sharpness, he remains determined, always seeking to push the boundaries of his magical knowledge. Silpha's anger instantly transforms into admiration as she's amazed to witness Lloyd's ability to use 2 spells simultaneously, a feat even the palace magicians struggle with. Little does she know, Lloyd is actually employing 4 spells, keeping the additional ones hidden from her notice. He wonders about her potential shock if she ever discovered his true capabilities, but decides to keep it a secret for now. Later, Lloyd is forced into taking a bath despite his intense desire to continue reading. The maids caution him against spending too much time in the library, warning him of a forbidden library's demon, grimoire, rumored to devour those who linger too long. They tell a story about Salem's near destruction in the past, following the sacrifice of numerous mages, serving as a grim reminder of the demon's menace. Though Silpha doubts that Lloyd would be scared, he secretly trembles with curiosity at the thought of an ancient demon. Amidst the maids' debate over who will comfort the frightened Lloyd, he seizes the opportunity to slip away. Unbeknownst to them, Lloyd's fear isn't of the demon, but rather his excitement at the prospect of discovering the forbidden library hidden in the castle's basement. Under the cover of night, Lloyd employs wind magic to cloak himself in invisibility, slipping past the guards who underestimate the dangers within the forbidden library. Despite the 10 mages' powerful sealing spells, Lloyd effortlessly breaches the barrier, entering the forbidden room. Inside, he marvels at the forbidden library's contents, briefly inspecting its ancient tomes. However, his exploration is abruptly interrupted as Grimoire, the sealed demon, reveals itself, catching Lloyd off guard. Lloyd confidently introduces himself to Grimoire, prompting the demon to consider whether the boy could be persuaded to break his seal. Recognizing the weakened state of the seal, Grimoire attempts to trick Lloyd with promises of endless wealth. However, Lloyd sees through the demon's facade, noting the poor quality of its imitation magic. Maintaining his composure, Lloyd explains his dedication to studying magic in the kingdom, refusing to let a dangerous demon ruin his dreams. Despite Grimoire's assurances of harboring no ill intent toward the present inhabitants, Lloyd remains skeptical. However, when Grimoire offers to teach him ancient lost magic, Lloyd starts to get interested, recognizing the value in such knowledge. Lloyd then lifts the seal, hoping to learn ancient magic in return, but Grimoire launches a devastating attack. To Grimoire's surprise, Lloyd survives and marvels at the unique attack, eager to learn more. Despite Grimoire's furious onslaught, Lloyd remains calm, using his barrier to analyze each attack. Driven by his fascination with magic, Lloyd willingly endures the pain of Grimoire's assaults, determined to understand their intricacies. Grimoire is stunned when Lloyd channels the magic into his finger, demonstrating his deep appreciation for its beauty, even amidst the agony. Lloyd, intrigued by Grimoire's ancient magic, requests for more. Enraged, Grimoire summons an even more potent spell, utilizing the rare ability to synchronize two incantations simultaneously, a feat only possible for demons with two mouths. Despite Grimoire's secret technique, his most formidable magic fails to even scratch Lloyd's barrier. Lloyd admires the effort it must have taken to reach such power. But as Grimoire attempts to flee, he's shocked to find Lloyd has erected another barrier. And Lloyd explains it's a precaution born from past mistakes, displaying his foresight. Grimoire quickly prepares for another assault, but Lloyd, finished analyzing, powers up his own spell, demanding Grimoire to demonstrate his defensive abilities. With a massive fire attack, Lloyd one-shots Grimoire, who marvels at the source of Lloyd's immense mana. Lloyd then effortlessly restored the devastated room, which made Grimoire awestruck, acknowledging Lloyd as his master. In all of Lloyd's power, Grimoire offers to serve as his familiar to avoid enduring endless pain from Lloyd's tests. Thus, Grimoire pledges himself to the remarkable mage, now known as Master Lloyd. To avoid being found out, Grimoire transforms into the cutest animal he can muster, concealing his true intentions beneath his adorableness. He's hoping that Lloyd will eventually lower his guard, providing opportunity to strike. Lloyd then instructs him to hop into his pocket, and Grimoire sees it as a foolish decision, but he complies nonetheless, intending to exploit Lloyd to seize control of his mind and body. However, Grimoire's plans are put to an end when he senses the density of Lloyd's mana, realizing he's facing a being beyond his understanding. Trembling in fear, Grimoire questions Lloyd's humanity, shattering his confidence. In a desperate attempt to butter up the powerful mage, Grimoire quickly changes his tune, suggesting Lloyd simply call him Grim. Acknowledging the temporary defeat of his ambitions, Grimoire resolves to be obedient for the time being as Lloyd happily goes off to indulge in his reading. The next day, as the noble Prince Albert prepares for his day, he navigates through the mansion. However, Grim warns Lloyd of the approaching presence, and Lloyd instructs Grim to hide. Turns out the visitor was Prince Albert, the second prince of the Silent Kingdom. Albert then demonstrated his exceptional magical prowess, effortlessly hitting targets with precision, astounding everyone in the training range. Despite his own magical talents, Lloyd prefers to remain in the background, uninterested in the throne. However, he appreciates Albert's occasional invitations to facilities like the range, where he can practice his magic freely. When it's Lloyd's turn to demonstrate, he tries to stay low-key, not wanting to draw attention from the bystanders. Instead of showcasing his full power, Lloyd skillfully manipulates his fireball spells to slightly graze the targets. Though the spectators were disappointed by Lloyd's modest display, Grim understands the incredible difficulty of controlling magic with such precision. Lloyd paid no attention to the spectators' comments, and instead focuses on improving his techniques. Albert, however, seems to know something, but he doesn't say anything and leaves to take a break, allowing Lloyd to train as much as he wants. Grateful for the opportunity, Lloyd eagerly sets out to explore new magic techniques. His first challenge is attempting the dual incantation, a feat previously thought impossible for humans. Initially, Grim warns him of the danger, as this ability can only be performed by demons with multiple mouths. However, Lloyd surprises himself by successfully executing the technique, incorporating Grim into his own body. However, upon entering his body, Grim realizes Lloyd is capable of reciting 100 spells at once, far surpassing even the most powerful demon's capabilities. Lloyd then explains his method called as spell stacking, where he compresses multiple incantations into a single line to shorten casting time. As Lloyd tests his new abilities, he discovers that he can speak through both mouths simultaneously, causing Grim to panic. However, Lloyd calmly silences him, while continuing to channel an immense power as he combines Infernal Fireball and Water Bolt spells. Witnessing the surge of mana, Grimm's panic peaks, realizing Lloyd is weaving together two incredibly advanced spells. Unable to contain the power on his own, Lloyd redirects it into the sky, which creates a breathtaking display visible throughout the castle. Despite doubts from some servants about Lloyd's magical abilities, Albert sees through his stage performance, recognizing Lloyd's hidden talent. He envisions Lloyd growing up to become the Grand Sage and hopes to have him as an ally in the future. The servants praise Albert for being able to make long-term plans, but Albert clarifies that he just wanted to get along with his little brother. He predicts that Lloyd has likely already knocked down all the targets, but Albert's words are met with skepticism from the servants, who doubt Lloyd's abilities once again. Suddenly, the sky outside turned dark, which confused everyone in the kingdom. The reason becomes clear as Grimm trembles in fear, having witnessed Lloyd blasting a hole through the atmosphere with his advanced magic. Panicking, Lloyd desperately tries to keep the incident under control and is quickly relieved when things return to normal. The following morning, news of the hole in the sky makes it into the newspaper, but the cause remains a mystery to all. Grimm grows frustrated with his infinite household duties for Lloyd, but reminds himself of his ultimate goal, ensuring Lloyd's well-being for when he eventually takes over his body. Meanwhile, Lloyd's attention has already shifted to a new story about high-ranking adventurers who conquered a challenging dungeon, returning with valuable treasures and magical items. Intrigued, Lloyd decides he wants to explore a dungeon himself. However, Grimm warns that his disappearance would likely cause mass panic if discovered. Lloyd then reveals a solution to Grimm's concerns, where he uses a corn to create a lifelike wooden replica of himself. Grimm watches as the replica moves and acts like Lloyd, thanks to nerves and other intricate details Lloyd incorporated into it. However, Lloyd acknowledges that this won't fool Silpha, who obsesses over him to the point of noticing small details like his daily height increase. To address this, Lloyd transfers Grimm's soul into the replica and keeps control of his body through his hand, leaving the maids charmed with its cuteness. With Grimm now in charge of the body double, Lloyd heads outside, leaving the rest to Grimm. However, Grimm's mind starts to wander with his newfound freedom as he starts to plan his grand scheme. But suddenly, Lloyd expresses his appreciation for having Grimm as his familiar, which touched his heart. As Lloyd realizes that he doesn't know where to find a dungeon, Grimm notices someone being chased by some creatures who seemed like your mother. As the helpless girl runs, she suddenly turns the tables on her pursuers and defeats them with remarkable skill. Grimm notices her talent and identifies her as a martial artist. Lloyd also recognizes the breathing technique she employs, which allows the users to harness an energy called ki, granting them incredible strength. Despite watching the girl from afar, the girl somehow spots Lloyd and Grimm. Grimm then warns Lloyd that she may recognize him as the seventh prince, sparking panic in Lloyd. To avoid being recognized, Lloyd quickly changes his appearance using a spell that allows him to transform into someone he's seen before. And with his newly learned dual incantation, Lloyd combines his appearance with Albert's to create a unique look. He then introduces himself as Alberto, and the girl also introduces herself as Tao. While Lloyd worries about Tao suspecting something, it turns out that she is actually in a panic because she finds Alberto attractive. Tao then explains that she spent her entire life training and recently became an adventurer in search of romance, though she's had little success due to her martial prowess intimidating potential partners. Despite Tao's initial intentions, she eagerly accepts Lloyd's invitation to explore a dungeon together. Inside the dungeon, Tao showcases her combat skills, while Lloyd is fixated on glowing rocks. They then decide to take a break where they cook themselves a meal. Lloyd then questions Tao about ki, which shocks Tao as not a lot of people know what ki is. She explains that mastery of ki begins and ends with proper breathing techniques. These techniques fill the body with ki, which helps the users to unleash bursts of superhuman strength. Tao then suggests that instead of focusing on mastering this technique, Alberto should concentrate on winning her heart. However, Lloyd ignores this and surprises Tao by successfully mimicking her breathing technique, though she warns him of the intense burning sensation it may cause if he's not used to it. Excited by this newfound power, he eagerly accepts Tao's offer to teach him more about ki, committing to practicing the technique until they leave the dungeon. Meanwhile, Grimm, on the other hand, is baffled by Lloyd's single-minded pursuit of magic despite his privileged life and finds himself shocked when Silpha appears behind him. In the dungeon, Tao demonstrates a ki blast, defeating the dungeon boss with ease. They receive a chest as a reward, but Tao explains that a dungeon with minimal growth won't give valuable loot. While examining the chest, Tao is astonished to see Alberto has already learned the ki breathing technique in such a short time. Realizing the potential benefits of having Alberto as her fiancé, she then opens the chest only to trigger a deadly trap. As a menacing foe emerges, Lloyd wonders if it's the true boss of the dungeon. Standing face to face with the dungeon boss, Ta urges Lloyd to leave while she handles the monster. However, Lloyd is determined to stay and witness her defeat this creature. However, without any warning, Ta unleashes her technique, blasting Lloyd out of the cave in hopes that he'll safely reach the dungeon entrance, albeit with a few bruises. As the boss turns its attention to Ta, she evades its attacks, pondering why such a formidable enemy appeared in a low-level dungeon. Recognizing the boss's strength, Ta realizes it will be a tough opponent even for an A-rank adventurer. Determined to buy time for Lloyd's escape, Ta focuses on dodging the boss's never-ending onslaught. On the other hand, after getting propelled by the blast, Lloyd flies through the dungeon. He's salty that he was forced to leave, as he still had a lot of questions about Ki. He then creates a barrier to slow his momentum before eventually coming to a stop. Unsure why Ta sent him away, Lloyd seeks Grimm's advice but receives no response until Grimm, in a small voice, tells him to return quickly, begging for his help. Back in the cave, Ta realizes she can't defeat the boss alone and decides to retreat slowly. However, the boss notices her use of Ki and reveals that he had consumed his fair share of people with similar skills in the past, gaining their knowledge. Dismissing Ta as unworthy of consumption, the boss expresses interest in Lloyd due to his swift reflexes, capable of dodging its attacks. As Ta confronts the boss, it somehow reminded her of Lloyd. However, despite their shared pursuit of knowledge, Lloyd and the boss are vastly different. She's impressed that Lloyd recognizes the importance of Ki and its potential power. Determined to defeat the boss, Ta unleashes her Ki attack, only to find it blocked by a barrier. Refusing to let the boss get the best of her years of training, Ta pushes herself to break through the barrier, unleashing a powerful energy beam that hits the boss. Exhausted from using all of her power, Ta collapses, unable to move. However, the boss levitates above her and prepares to unleash a spell that surpasses her Ki energy. As he unleashes his attack, Lloyd suddenly appears beside Ta, protecting her with a barrier. Disappointed by Ta's surrender, Lloyd assures her he'll handle the boss. As the boss prepares an incantation, Lloyd effortlessly maneuvers behind him and uses a combination of Ki and magic techniques. Despite the boss's relentless attacks, Lloyd's barrier holds strong. Remembering Ta's advice, Lloyd focuses on his breathing, inhaling deeply and using a sprint spell to accelerate the process. With determination, Lloyd moves through the cave, trying to absorb as much air as possible. As the boss attempts to attack Lloyd, his magic is unable to beat the unstoppable force. Meanwhile, Lloyd focuses on his breathing technique, inhaling and exhaling deeply to build up Ki energy. Ta watches in amazement as Lloyd's determination grows, but Lloyd soon realizes that his barrier is obstructing his breathing. With a quick decision, he dispels the barrier, much to the boss's surprise. Swinging onto the rocks to support himself, Lloyd continues his breathing exercises, dodging the boss's attacks with agility. Ta realizes that Lloyd purposely dispelled his barrier to improve his breathing and build up more Ki energy. Combining Ki with his mana, Lloyd unleashes a series of strikes, disappointed when they fail to defeat the boss. Determined, he refines his technique, making his strikes sharper and thinner. In a last-ditch effort, the boss erects a barrier to shield himself, but Lloyd's strike pierces, cuts the boss in half, ultimately defeating the boss. A treasure chest then appears. Ta is disappointed with the treasure inside, but Lloyd decides to keep the dagger, as he sensed residual mana within it. However, the chest suddenly sinks into the ground, prompting Lloyd to grab hold of it. After learning that the chest is the dungeon's core, he realized that the chest's purpose was to consume magic items, absorb equipment dropped by adventurers, and create new dungeons. With this knowledge, it suddenly sparked a brilliant idea in his little mind. They narrowly evade disaster as the dungeon collapses around them, but Lloyd remains fascinated by the chest's function. Ta then questions Lloyd's use of his Ki techniques, suspecting it was to retaliate against the boss's mockery of her, but Lloyd reassures her it was simply for his enjoyment. In her mind, she reveals that the final attack Lloyd used was a secret Ki blast technique, something even she is not capable of. Not wanting to be bested by Lloyd, Ta promises to train herself in order to become stronger. As Lloyd flies away, she vows to become a girl worthy of getting Lloyd's attention. Upon returning home, Lloyd finds Grimoire battered from training with Sylpha. Grimoire blames Lloyd for his current state, but Lloyd apologizes nonetheless. The next day, they experiment with the dagger Lloyd retrieved, discovering its mana essence that is capable of enhancing weapons. However, Lloyd is cautious, knowing mana essence is scarce and enchantments are very risky. Instead of risking the dagger, he opts to analyze its essence to potentially replicate it. Lloyd uses a spell to separate the mana essence from the blade, which resulted in oil, silver, and something called hematite. Grimoire, however, recognizes the hematite as something rare, which was a special powder from a monster's core. Lloyd then tells Grimoire that they can make more hematite using the chest they got from the dungeon. Lloyd is happy because now they have everything they need to make mana essence. He then asks his dad for help, and his dad gives him a lot of silver coins. They then melt the silver into liquid in the ancient library. Later, Lloyd and Silpha spar together. He tries to surprise her with magic, but Silpha outsmarts his little trick and hits him back. Even though Lloyd tried everything he could, Silpha still wins. However, after the fight, Silpha still gives Lloyd some oil. She tells him that it's okay because she's happy that he's not weak, referring to his performance the other day. She then came to the conclusion that Lloyd was just having a bad day. Grimoire, on the other hand, wonders how Silpha always wins, even when Lloyd uses his magic. Then Lloyd, with Grimoire's help, creates mana essence from the oil, silver, and hematite. He then seeks Prince Albert's assistance to help with his little experiment. Prince Albert then ordered the royal guards to provide their swords, allowing Lloyd to begin enchanting. However, during his first try, he overloads the sword with spells, causing it to break. Determined, he continues his little experiment, ultimately enchanting 50 out of 120 swords successfully. When Lloyd presents his results to his brother, Prince Albert is surprised that Lloyd successfully enchanted 50 out of 120 weapons. Lloyd, however, apologizes for the 70 swords that broke, revealing some mishaps during his experiment. In his mind, Prince Albert is impressed because even the best enchanter in the world can only successfully enchant 10% of their weapons. The guards, on the other hand, think that Lloyd is lying, which makes Silpha mad. But when one guard tries to put away his sword, it cuts through the scabbard like butter, revealing its authenticity. Lloyd then asks Prince Albert to see the weapons in action, and his brother agrees, inviting him to go on a monster hunt with them. As Prince Albert and Lloyd travel in a carriage driven by Silpha, Lloyd dozes off with Grimoire in his lap while Albert occupies himself with a book. Upon waking up, Lloyd notices some farmers, sparking his interest in observing people's daily lives. And as they enter the forest for their monster hunt, Lloyd wonders if monsters are common there, but Silpha explains they only mainly appear near a nearby lake. Excited to be on the expedition, Lloyd shares his enthusiasm for seeing his enchanted swords in action. Observing Lloyd's excitement, Albert acknowledges Silpha's attentive gaze on Lloyd. She then tells him that she appreciates being included in the expedition as she feels responsible for Lloyd's safety, revealing that it would be normal for her to worry because she's Lloyd's mentor. However, Albert suggests that there might be another reason she's concerned, teasing her about their relationship. Silpha reacts by drawing her sword, causing Albert to quickly take back his words. Suddenly, she interrupts to alert them of unexpected guests, kobolds armed with steel weapons. While the guards protect the carriage, Lloyd pretends to be frightened, though Grimoire sees through his act. Lloyd admits he detected the ambush using Tao's key technique, spectral detection, which allows him to be constantly aware of his surroundings through key breathing. Grimoire, however, realizes Lloyd's constant use of detection and barrier techniques, acknowledging his growing power. Lloyd focuses on the battle as the guards engage the kobolds, easily cutting them like butter, which surprises the guards themselves. Pleased with the enchantment's success, Lloyd observes how sharp the swords are, which made Albert proudly acknowledge Lloyd's genius and skill. Hearing this, Silpha also acknowledges Lloyd's excellence, standing atop a heap of defeated enemies. This frightened Lloyd as he knew she relied solely on her strength since he hadn't enchanted her sword. Suddenly, a kobold leaps out to attack the carriage, but Ta intercepts it mid-air, surprising everyone. She explains she sensed the monsters nearby and came to help. Lloyd almost accidentally calls out Ta's name, forgetting he's not currently in disguise. Ta then approaches him, noticing that he's using key breathing techniques and mistakes him for Alberto, his previous disguise. However, Silpha swiftly takes down a kobold going for Ta, warning her not to cause more trouble. But Ta defends herself, saying she was aware of the kobold due to her key techniques, leading to tension between her and Silpha. Seeing this, Albert quickly intervenes to ease the tension. He then suggests that they all bond by spending time together at the lake. As they arrive, he thanks Ta for ensuring their safe arrival and introduces himself as the second Prince of Salam. Surprised, Ta apologizes for her earlier behavior and tries to locate Lloyd, still suspicious of him. Meanwhile, Lloyd hides behind a tent, realizing Ta was able to locate him using spectral detection. He then decides to stay quiet to avoid suspicion. As soon as she enters his tent, he is met with the top 2 tallest mountains in the world. But somehow, this actually annoyed Lloyd, who asked why she was changing in his tent. Silpha then tells him that she's assigned to protect Lloyd, which includes spending the night with him. Suddenly, Ta walks in, catching them off guard. As soon as she enters, Silpha attacks Ta, but she evades the blow. They then argue while Lloyd takes the opportunity to slip away, fighting the atmosphere more suffocating even when he's not at the castle. Albert teases Lloyd about his playboy reputation and mentions Silpha's changed behavior since she was assigned to him. Silpha, on the other hand, questions how Ta found them, but Ta insists that she used her key senses, acclaiming Silpha doubts. Albert then warns Lloyd about the dangers of relationships with women, emphasizing that it can be horrifying. Meanwhile, Ta and Silpha continue to engage in their argument, drawing the attention of the guards who end up being beaten by the two of them. After their argument, Ta then informs Silpha of her task to repair a chapel on a nearby hill. However, concerned for her safety, Albert suggests that she stay with them for the night to keep watch. But not long after, their plans are instantly interrupted by the sudden appearance of a bear wolf. Seeing this, Silpha urges Lloyd to stay behind her as they prepare to face the creature. Observing the wolf's agility, Lloyd seeks Grimoire's opinion, but notices Grimoire's unusual behavior. Grimoire seems to be preoccupied with thoughts about the rundown chapel, leaving Lloyd puzzled. As the wolf attacks the guards, Tao intervenes with her key strike to save one of them. But despite her efforts, the wolf continues its assault, prompting Albert to use his enchanted fire aspect sword, shooting out a powerful fireball spell that defeats the wolf and prevents harm to the nearby village. The guards are impressed by Albert's swift defeat of the wolf, but Albert credits Lloyd for enhancing his spell with the enchantment. Lloyd is pleased with the success of his enchantment on Albert's sword, and Grimoire recalls that the chapel on the hill once sealed a demon, piquing Lloyd's interest. Suddenly, the supposedly defeated bear wolf rises again, accompanied by more monsters summoned by Pazuzu, the demon. Angry at their presence, Pazuzu commands the monsters to attack. But despite Albert's attempts to fight them off, their rapid healing abilities made the fight seem impossible. Ta realizes the dire situation due to the monster's regeneration. While Albert admits that he's never faced such monsters before, noting that even some are hybrids, he then came to the conclusion that Pazuzu is somehow manipulating them. Lloyd then asks Grimoire whether he's acquainted with Pazuzu, but Grimoire clarifies that he doesn't know the demon personally and explains its method of controlling monsters by infusing them with mana, enhancing their regeneration. He reveals that they have to focus on defeating the demon before they're trapped in an endless battle, but Lloyd is intrigued by the idea of learning mana transmutation. Grimoire initially hesitates, warning that it might not be the right moment with everyone fighting for their lives. On the other side, Silpha mocks Tao's inability to defeat the monsters, but Tao fires back, criticizing Silpha for not taking action herself. The demon then taunts Lloyd for hiding behind everyone else, which infuriates Silpha, who goes to confront the demon directly. Disgusted by the demon's arrogance, Silpha refuses its offer to join its ranks and decides to end its life. But the demon keeps on boasting about its ability to regenerate monsters fueled by mana. Confident in her skills, Silpha strikes the bear wolf, dismembering the demon's host monster, causing the others to struggle with regeneration. Observing this distraction, Albert realizes their chance to defeat the other monsters is to attack them while the main demon is preoccupied with healing itself. He then instructs Silpha to focus solely on damaging the demon, allowing the others an opportunity to take down the remaining monsters. As Grimoire continues Lloyd's mana lesson, he emphasizes how difficult it is to master the technique, even for demons who spend years trying to perfect the skill. He instructs Lloyd to start by altering the color, shape, and scent of his mana. But Lloyd quickly impresses Grimoire by creating a perfect flower with a distinct fragrance, surprising even himself with his rapid progress. Meanwhile, Silpha faces off against the demon, borrowing an enchanted sword borrowed from one of the guards. Despite the demon's relentless attacks, Silpha's defense remains flawless, making the demon question why such a formidable fighter would choose to be a maid. However, the demon proceeds to mock Lloyd, believing humans to be vulnerable when emotional. It then attacks Silpha, using the bear wolf to swallow her whole. However, Silpha surprises everyone by utilizing a secret language technique, tearing the demon apart from within its host monster. With the demon exposed, Silpha confronts its grotesque form, showcasing her unparalleled strength, which scares everyone in the vicinity. Seeing this, Lloyd realizes that Silpha is a force to be reckoned with, especially when she's serious. She then continues to advance the demon and tells him that the closest thing he'll get to Lloyd will only be his sword. Silpha confronts Pazuzu, urging him to surrender now that she has defeated him. However, Pazuzu only scoffs at her boldness and releases a poisonous mana from his mouth, enveloping the area, impairing Silpha's vision. While the knights celebrate their victory over the monsters, Albert reminds them that they still haven't defeated the demon. As the poisonous mana spreads, the knights start to lose consciousness except for Tao, who manages to avoid inhaling it. Unfortunately, Silpha falls to the poison, collapsing before Pazuzu. Angered by the defeat of his monsters, Pazuzu attacks Silpha, sending her crashing into a nearby tree. Though Albert tries to help her, he finds himself immobilized, unable to move at all. Pazuzu then reveals that anyone who breathes in his mana will fall under his control, explaining why Albert and the others are paralyzed. Silpha finally realizes the source of the foul odor in the air, but before Pazuzu can strike her again, Tao intervenes, shielding Silpha from his attack. Tao then tries to offer her assistance, but Silpha maintains her tough facade, which Tao sees through. However, Silpha insists that Tao should take Lloyd and escape for their lives as she sinks into the lake. Pazuzu praises Silpha's resilience, noting her fierce determination despite being closest to him when he releases mana. Suddenly, Pazuzu moves swiftly, catching Tao off guard from behind. Surprised by Tao's resistance to his mana, Pazuzu dodges her attacks effortlessly, grabbing her leg in the process. As Pazuzu holds Tao captive, she struggles to maintain her breathing rhythm, distressed by the suffocating effect of his mana. Pazuzu taunts her, suggesting she should seize the opportunity to flee or perhaps even join his ranks. However, Tao boldly rejects his offer, disgusted by the thought of aligning herself with such an ugly, smelling monkey. Instead, she defiantly declares her loyalty to someone she finds attractive, determined not to succumb to Pazuzu's influence. With a surge of determination, Tao channels her ki energy, unleashing a powerful electro attack on Pazuzu. However, she realizes it was a mistake to expend so much energy in one blow. Before she can recover, the monsters regenerate and continue their assault on her. Despite the overwhelming odds, Tao remains loyal, refusing to fall to Pazuzu's taunts and determined to protect Lloyd at all costs. Pazuzu tries to convince Tao, boasting about the superiority of his kin due to their ability to regenerate from any damage. He unleashes more of his mana, attempting to seduce Tao into joining his ranks and dedicating her life to him. However, Tao remains strong, sensing someone close by who gives her hope. Curious, Pazuzu asks about this person, and Tao reveals she's referring to her hottie, who she believes will defeat him. Disgusted, Pazuzu loses interest in Tao, dismissing her as a mere dog in heat. Instead, he focuses on corrupting Silpha, intending to make her his eternal slave to compensate for his lost kin. As Pazuzu plots his next move, Lloyd realizes how he's been controlling the bear wolves. Pazuzu confirms Lloyd's suspicions, revealing his cruel methods of manipulation. Lloyd is stunned by the revelation, but Pazuzu is quickly shocked when he notices Lloyd and Grimoire seemingly unaffected by his mana. Questioning why a demon like Grimoire is protecting a human, Pazuzu is confused as he's never seen such a submissive demon before. Pazuzu continues his mockery, taunting Grimoire for his appearance, but Grimoire is angered by the demon's insults. Initially, he considers giving Pazuzu some advice but decides not to, deciding to let Pazuzu face the consequences of his actions. Pazuzu commands his minions to attack Lloyd, presenting an opportunity for Lloyd to attempt mana transformation due to the abundance of monsters. Lloyd knows he needs a substantial amount of mana for this, but despite his limited control over it, he channels more than enough to create a warm and peaceful atmosphere. The bear wolves are enveloped by Lloyd's mana, allowing him to gain control of the monsters. Lloyd instructs one of the wolves who consumed Tao to release her. Impressed by Lloyd's sorcery, Pazuzu releases more mana to regain control, but Grimoire reveals that he has already undone his manipulation of the wolves. The monsters start to turn on Pazuzu, attacking him and freeing Silpha. Lloyd, on the other hand, marvels at their coordination and power when led properly. Enraged, Pazuzu strikes down the bear wolves for betraying him, still trying to hide the fact that he sent their parents to the heavens. He then tells Lloyd that his magic will never match that of a demon, repeating Grimoire's earlier warning about the resilience of demons against magic. Pazuzu, aware that he's no longer sharing his mana with the monsters, decides to unleash his full power. Meanwhile, Lloyd is curious about why demons have never fallen to magic and is eager to discover the limits of a demon's resistance. As Lloyd releases his mana, Pazuzu is astonished by what he sees. Grimoire observes that Pazuzu finally understands why his mana didn't affect Lloyd. Lloyd thanks Pazuzu for voluntarily allowing him to test various spells. Realizing that he's doomed, Pazuzu tries to awaken from what he perceives as a nightmare. Lloyd attempts to cast a barrier around Pazuzu, but the demon evades in time, realizing Lloyd's intentions were not to fight but to capture him for experimentation. Desperate to escape, Pazuzu tries his best to flee, dodging Lloyd's barriers and pleading for him to stop. Taking cover behind a rock, Pazuzu tries to catch his breath, only to narrowly evade another barrier cast by Lloyd. Grimoire then wonders how many barriers Lloyd can cast simultaneously, but Lloyd reveals he can conjure 20 at once and potentially more with Grimoire's assistance. Lloyd aggressively casts more barriers, forcing Pazuzu to dodge all of it. Frustrated and disbelieved by Lloyd's ability to maintain so many spells, Pazuzu searches for an opening to escape, but finds himself increasingly cornered by Lloyd's relentless onslaught. In the midst of the chaos, Pazuzu congratulates himself for evading Lloyd's barriers. However, his self-praise is abruptly interrupted when Lloyd ensnares him in his domain expansion. Desperate to break free, Pazuzu questions whether Lloyd intends to experiment on him, but Lloyd reminds him of his earlier declaration that magic wouldn't affect him. Lloyd then confronts Pazuzu about his crossbreeding experiments with the bear wolves, which angers him even more. Lloyd exposes Pazuzu for his horrible actions against the monsters, denying him the right to complain. Activating a rapid spell-casting technique, Lloyd approaches Pazuzu in his domain expansion. Pazuzu, realizing the magnitude of Lloyd's power, pleads for mercy and offers to fulfill any desires Lloyd may have in exchange for sparing his life. Lloyd, however, absorbed in his magic, pays no attention to Pazuzu's pleas. Unleashing a potent spell combining all 4 natural elements, Lloyd marvels at his ability to cast 240 spells per minute. Ignoring Pazuzu's, Lloyd wishes to maintain the spell's activation for 30 minutes, captivated by its beauty. 5 minutes later, Lloyd calls out to Pazuzu, but he receives no response, sparking fear that the demon may have succumbed to his spells. In his last moments, Pazuzu reflects on how his legacy crumbled in mere minutes despite centuries of preparation. Grimoire then explains to Lloyd that demons possess high resistance to magic, but can be overcome by a relentless barrage of spells. Saddened by his downfall, Pazuzu and Lloyd share a fleeting moment of acknowledgement before Lloyd notices the other's awakening, prompting him to leave to conceal his actions. Rejoining the group, Lloyd fabricates a story about Alberto's intervention in defeating the demon, leaving Tao searching in vain for a glimpse of him. Grimoire, now empowered by Pazuzu's essence, harbors aspirations of defeating Lloyd in a rematch, recognizing that he still has much to learn to rival Lloyd's strength. Upon their return to the castle, the king commends Albert for his role in defeating the demon and its horde, though he warns him for venturing out with only his personal guards. Albert acknowledges his mistakes and updates the king on the adventurers who aided them, noting Alberto's disappearance and Tao's quest for her beloved. Intrigued by Alberto's prowess, the king tries to further gain information, but Albert redirects the conversation to Lloyd's indispensable contribution. He proposes that Lloyd should be allowed to compete for the throne, acknowledging his role in creating weapons that destroyed the monsters. The king acknowledges Lloyd's abilities but expresses concerns about introducing more competition for the throne. Albert reassures the king that he's prepared to lose the throne to someone more deserving, emphasizing the importance of fairness and Lloyd's potential as a ruler. However, he playfully warns Lloyd that he won't surrender easily, setting the stage for a friendly rivalry. When the king asks Lloyd if he's interested in contesting for the throne, Lloyd declines without much emotion. Instead, he went out to the courtyard to play with one of the bear wolves that followed him home. Grimoire, feeling jealous of the bear wolf's closeness to Lloyd, puffs himself up, hoping for some attention from Lloyd too. But his attention shifts when Silpha enters the courtyard. Hastily, he hides Grimoire in the bear wolf's fur, introducing him as Shiro. Silpha then suggests using magic to teach Shiro, which Lloyd wanted to give a try. Meanwhile, inside Shiro's fur, Grimoire is baffled as Lloyd declines the throne offer just so he could focus on magic. The king admires Lloyd's humility for turning down the throne opportunity, but Albert believes Lloyd's destiny may lie beyond their kingdom. Excited about Lloyd's potential, the king eagerly anticipates what he will achieve in the future. Lloyd impresses Silpha with the tricks Shiro can perform, and he's amazed that Shiro was able to learn simple tricks so quickly. When Lloyd attempts to teach Shiro more complex tricks by inscribing them into spells, Shiro always ends up confused and dancing. Lloyd then explains the issue to Silpha, who suggests seeking help from a monster expert, which is when they both think of the same person and decide to visit Princess Alias's tower. Despite Silpha's reluctance, they arrive at the princess's tower with Grimoire hidden in Shiro's fur. Lloyd marvels at the grandeur of the tower, and we soon learn that Elise is Lloyd's elder sister, the sixth princess of Solum, who adores animals of all kinds. Elise eagerly greets Lloyd with an unexpected elbow drop and overwhelms him with affection, hardly letting him get a word in. She proceeds to greet him in Sweet Home Alabama style, which shocks Silpha. Soon after, she notices that Lloyd seems weakened, and she rushes to his aid. Eris, the tower maid, however, scolds Elise for her antics, especially for kissing Lloyd, but Elise tells her that she can't resist because Lloyd looks too adorable. Soon after noticing Shiro, Elise wonders if the bear wolf is the reason Lloyd visited her. Lloyd then introduces the bear wolf as Shiro, and was surprised that Elise quickly recognized Shiro's true nature as a bear wolf. Elise, however, claims that her insight was intuitive and attributes it to her animal mana thing. Soon after seeing this, Silpha suggests leaving, doubting Elise's understanding of mana and her ability to teach Lloyd intimate monster communication. But Lloyd decides to stay a bit longer, intrigued by what Elise might offer. He asks Elise about her own monster, and she reveals Lyru, a lesser Fenrir, appearing behind them. Sylpha's bonnet is snatched by Liru and presented to Elise, showcasing her control over the Fenrir. This made Lloyd marvel at her command, impressed by her ability to communicate without any visible cues. He's eager to learn and asks Elise to teach him to communicate with Shiro as she does with Liru. But Elise warns him it won't be easy and explains that love is the key to monster communication. She then continues to demonstrate it and summons several monsters, emphasizing that love enables anyone to connect with them. Elise hints that her method might not be suitable for Lloyd, considering her magnetic presence for the animals. However, she assures Lloyd that dedication can overcome any obstacle. Demonstrating control over the animals once more, Elise showcases her influence, making both Sylpha and Elise uncomfortable. Sylpha urges them to leave the tower, expressing her discomfort with using love as a means of control. On the other hand, Lloyd is immersed in thought, realizing he never considered using love in such a way. Seeing this, Sylpha daydreams about Lloyd embracing love, envisioning a romantic outcome with the boy. Lloyd then admits that he only tried issuing commands to Shiro and not employing love like Elias. Observing Elias's mana affecting the monsters, Lloyd realizes she unconsciously links with them using magic, transmitting thoughts directly. After attempting to sync his feelings with Shiro, Lloyd starts to see Shiro respond positively, surprising everyone. Shiro somehow manages to follow Lloyd's unspoken cues, running circles around him. Upon seeing this, Elise quickly saw Lloyd as a genius for linking minds with Shiro, unlike her simple approach of using love. This made Lloyd believe that love facilitates empathy with animals, making the connection easier. Moved by his words, Elise rushes to hug him, but Lloyd reminds Elise of the monsters still causing havoc around the tower. After leaving the tower, Lloyd feels worn out but grateful for his newfound ability to communicate with monsters. But Sylpha suggests focusing on sword training. However, Albert suddenly insists on involving Lloyd in some business. They soon meet Diane, the fourth prince, who doubts Lloyd's enchanting skills and wants to test Lloyd to confirm them firsthand. Albert then introduces Diane as a prince with an interest in enchantments and blacksmithing, praising his dedication to learning for the kingdom's sake. However, Diane still doubts Lloyd's enchanting abilities, not believing that he's beyond the foreign master sorcerers. He then challenges Lloyd to prove himself and expresses disappointment at Lloyd's dishonesty. Despite Diane's skepticism, Lloyd swiftly finishes enchanting the sword, leaving Diane astonished and unable to comprehend what he's witnessing. Albert, however, isn't surprised by Diane's reaction as he acknowledges Lloyd's exceptional skill. As Diane examines the layers of spells in Lloyd's enchantment, he reluctantly accepts Lloyd's talent and becomes excited about the possibility of creating ultimate spellbound weapons with Lloyd's assistance. Diane soon explains the concept of spellbound weapons, where magic is inscribed into the weapon during the smithing process, allowing for more advanced spells. He admits his lack of magical talent but expresses enthusiasm for creating weapons that enable everyone to use magic. Intrigued by the idea, Lloyd agrees to partner with Diane. They begin crafting a fire spellbound sword, with Diane envisioning a sword that emits flames upon swinging. Lloyd then suggests compressing the spell for an infernal fireball, but despite Diane's concerns about the lengthy incantation verse, Lloyd assures him he can compress the spell, presenting Diane with the result. As Lloyd and Diane continue their attempts to create the spellbound sword, they face repeated failures. Despite simplifying the enchantments, the spells just won't merge onto the steel. Lloyd is puzzled by the issue, with Grimoire also expressing surprise at his difficulties. Diane then reveals that he purchased some cheap mana essence, which Lloyd found that it's lacking in hematite, an essential component for spellbound weapons. Realizing they need more hematite, Lloyd plans to sneak into a dungeon to obtain it, but Sylpha purposely suggests this out loud, prompting Lloyd to fake reluctance due to his royal status. However, Sylpha reveals that the king has approved her request for Lloyd to broaden his horizons, including adventuring. She then proposes that Lloyd register at the Adventurers Guild, taking his first steps as an adventurer. At the guild, they meet Katerina, who assists Lloyd with registration. She explains the assessment process and presents him a crystal ball to measure his abilities. Lloyd recalls a similar crystal from his previous life, knowing it will explode if his true abilities are revealed. He then tries to suppress his magic to undetectable levels, and he cautiously touches the crystal. To everyone's surprise, the crystal reveals he's an E-rank adventurer, the lowest rank. The other adventurers laugh at his low rank, as even the most inept rookies usually receive a D rank. Despite his suppressed magic, Katerina is impressed that Lloyd ranks A in magic. She suggests that he could one day rival the renowned Silver Blader, though the other adventurers scoff at the idea, unable to envision an E rank reaching such heights. They doubt Lloyd could achieve the same fame as the Silver Blader. Diane soon explains the concept of spellbound weapons, where magic is inscribed into the weapon during the smithing process, allowing for more advanced spells. He He admits his lack of magical talent but expresses enthusiasm for creating weapons that enable everyone to use magic. Intrigued by the idea, Lloyd agrees to partner with Dainana. They begin crafting a fire spellbound sword, with Dainana envisioning a sword that emits flames upon swinging. Lloyd then suggests compressing the spell for an infernal fireball, but despite Dainana's concerns about the lengthy incantation verse, Lloyd assures him he can compress the spell, presenting Dainana with the result. As Lloyd and Dainana continue their attempts to create the spellbound sword, they face repeated failures. Despite simplifying the enchantments, the spells just won't merge onto the steel. Lloyd is puzzled by the issue, with Grimoire also expressing surprise at his difficulties. Dainana then reveals that he purchased some cheap mana essence, which Lloyd found that it's lacking in hematite, an essential component for spellbound weapons. Realizing they need more hematite, Lloyd plans to sneak into a dungeon to obtain it, but Silpha purposely suggests this out loud, prompting Lloyd to fake reluctance due to his royal status. However, Silpha reveals that the king has approved her request for Lloyd to broaden his horizons, including adventuring. She then proposes that Lloyd register at the Adventurers Guild, taking his first steps as an adventurer. At the guild, they meet Katarina, who assists Lloyd with registration. She explains the assessment process and presents him a crystal ball to measure his abilities. Lloyd recalls a similar crystal from his previous life, knowing it will The intruder initially attempts to flee upon being spotted by Lloyd, but he quickly encloses her within a barrier using his magic to prevent her escape. Lloyd then approaches her with a friendly demeanor, but the intruder, realizing she's been caught, sheds her disguise and triggers a spell she'd rather not use on children. Lloyd quickly senses the pleasant scent of her poison but recognizes its potential danger, attempting to purify it with his spell. However, the intruder informs him that her poison cannot be cleansed by anyone. This intrigues Lloyd, realizing that the intruder's poison must be a unique transmuted mana abnormality, a trait possessed by a select few individuals known as the Blighted. Despite being scorned by society, the intruder introduces herself as Ren, the poison moth. Lloyd, however, fascinated by her abilities, observes as she effortlessly breaks a portion of his barrier, marveling at her power. Ren assures Lloyd that he won't lose his life from the small amount of poison he's absorbed, but warns him of the pain he'll experience in the coming days. After bidding Lloyd farewell, Ren flies away into the night sky. But as the effects of her poison wear off, Lloyd reflects on her ability to mask her presence so effectively. Grimoire then reminds him that it's not the time to admire her, and Lloyd confirms that he's no longer affected by the poison, having healed himself with a healing spell. Lloyd then explains to Grimoire of his intention of letting Ren go so he could track her to the Assassin's Guild headquarters, which he learned about from Silpha the day before. He recalls Silpha mentioning the unique abilities of each assassin, piquing his interest. Lloyd then begins to track Ren's movements, which amazes Grim as he can still detect her even when she completely removes her presence. Dressed up and ready to pursue Ren, Lloyd sets off while Silpha, armed and accompanied by Shiro, arrives in the courtyard, but is too late as Lloyd has already departed. Back at the headquarters, Ren reports back to her superior about being spotted and the castle's production of spellbound swords. She suggests that they may be preparing for war, but her superior dismisses her concerns, urging her not to emulate their former leader, Jade, as he is long gone. Ren, however, insists that Jade will return, but her superior disagrees. But as they argue, another assassin intervenes, warning them that they've been watched the entire time. Little Harry Potter then reveals himself, but Ren is surprised to see Lloyd moving freely despite her poison. Her superiors are also taken aback by Lloyd's abilities, realizing he's not just an ordinary kid. Another assassin becomes interested in Lloyd upon learning that the intruder is the 7th prince, who's responsible for the spellbound sword's mass production. Despite the assassin's warnings that he can't escape, Lloyd calmly approaches them, deactivating his barrier. Grimoire is puzzled by Lloyd's decision to leave himself vulnerable, but Lloyd explains that he wants to face the assassin's abilities head-on, not wanting to waste their unique powers. He assumes a martial arts stance, ready to engage them, and instructs Grimoire to stay out of the fight. Grimoire, however, advises him to put up a barrier, but before he can finish his sentence, an assassin attacks Lloyd, inadvertently hitting Grimoire in the process. Lloyd successfully blocks the assassin's attacks using his cape and martial arts skills. Impressed by the assassin's fluid movements, Lloyd remains focused, using techniques he learned from Tao to keep up. The assassin, introducing himself as Babylon, the Warp-Blighted, explains that his unique ability is to bend and move his body to fit through small spaces, earning him the nickname, the Giant Rat. Lloyd realizes that Babylon's warp abilities are unique as they don't rely on magic. But suddenly, another assassin named Crow appears and commands Lloyd to sink, causing Lloyd to feel heavy and fall to his knees. He then reveals himself as the Cursed Blighted, whose words are imbued with mana, which stopped him from speaking to avoid causing harm. Galley, known as the Spider, the Web-Blighted, attacks Lloyd with mucus-based abilities. However, Lloyd quickly breaks free from the white mucus and analyzes their abilities with a smile. Talia, the Pain-Blighted, also attacks Lloyd, which she does by sharing her injuries with him, but Lloyd surprises everyone by healing both himself and Talia with a spell. As the assassins line up to face him, Lloyd shows no fear or shame, even with his willy dangling in the air. He continues to reinforce his blade with strength and adopts Sylphus sword techniques, initially surprising the assassins. Lloyd then attacks them with a deranged smile, taking down Babylon despite his body's softening ability. Crow and Galley try to retaliate, but Lloyd avoids Crow's speech magic, causing it to affect Galley instead. Lloyd also swiftly defeats Talia and sets his sights on Crow, wondering how he'll counterattack. Despite Crow's attempts to command him, Lloyd takes him down, feeling his body grow heavier in the process. Galley, angered by Lloyd's actions, threatens him, but Lloyd remains focused on attacking Talia. Despite Talia's warning that harming her would hurt him due to their linked bodies, Lloyd shows her the power of gender equality, causing her pain but also experiencing a strange delight from her abilities. Galley tries to restrain Lloyd, but he breaks free once again and sends Galley flying into the wall. Lloyd is intrigued by their abilities and asks Ren to demonstrate hers, but she refuses, considering Lloyd a psychopath. He decides to approach her anyways, but Galley quickly explains that none of them can fully control their powers. As Galley attacks once more, Lloyd dodges and electrifies him with magic. Ren attacks Lloyd in retaliation, but he erects a barrier to block her poison. But it turns out Galley feels better due to Lloyd's spell. He sheds tears of joy as his curse has just been lifted. Lloyd then clarifies that his spell only grants control over their abilities and doesn't remove them completely. He also offers to inscribe the rest of the assassins with the spell, and they gladly accept, relieved to finally have control over their mana. As Galley begins to tell Lloyd the origin story of the Assassin's Guild, Lloyd initially shows disinterest, but eventually becomes intrigued. Galley recounts how the guild was formed by Jade, their leader known as the Phantom Blighted, who possessed the ability to be teleported randomly across the world. One time, Jade returned after a long absence and inspired them with his vision of helping behind the scenes, leaving their emblem, a coin with a wolf head, at each job site to show the world their good purpose. However, as he was in the middle of his speech, Jade disappeared again, leaving the guild to deal with problems the Adventurers Guild couldn't solve. Hearing this, Lloyd becomes intrigued by Jade's teleportation ability, but his attention is quickly diverted when a letter suddenly appears. It turns out to be from Jade, informing them that he's heading to the Lordos domain. Sometime later, Sylpha arrives at the hideout and finds Lloyd's letter, which states that he will be going to the Lordos domain with the Assassin's Guild. As she returns to Prince Albert, they discuss the contents of the letter together. Initially, this made Albert think that Lloyd was kidnapped by the Assassin Guild in conjunction with the Lordos clan, prompting him to consider war. However, upon further reflection and Sylpha's agreement, they realize that Lloyd wouldn't allow himself to be captured and begins to suspect a different scenario. But suddenly, Sylpha presents Albert with Lloyd's clothes, which were filled with an unusual white sticky substance. This enraged everyone in the room, causing Prince Albert to quickly declare war, while the carefree Lloyd continues to travel to the Lordos domain with the Assassin Guild. The members of the Assassin Guild were taken aback when they saw their guild's emblem on the letter that had suddenly appeared. They were puzzled about its origin, and Galley swiftly opened it. Inside, they found a message from Jade, their long-lost leader. Jade apologized for his prolonged absence and revealed that he had overthrown the rulers of Lordos who were preparing for war. He announced that he had become the Lord of Lordos and was ready to receive the guild members at the Lord's Manor. He also mentioned that he had prepared a celebration to welcome them and expressed his desire for them to live together as he had promised. The assassins were overjoyed to learn that Jade was alive and had kept his promise to them. In the present, Lloyd, using his abilities, was flying the assassins to Lordos, eager to see Jade. As they traveled, Lloyd recalled how Galley had thanked him after reading the letter, expressing gratitude for the ability to control their curses and vowing to repay Lloyd for his help. Ren asked Lloyd to accompany them to Lordos, suggesting that he could imprint the spell on Jade as well. Lloyd, however, curious about the origin of the letter, asked if she knew where it had come from. Ren explained that it had suddenly appeared out of nowhere, but Lloyd deduced that this meant the letter had been accurately teleported to their location, a feat that indicated mastery over Jade's powers. This realization led the others to conclude that Jade must have gained control over his power. This made Galley wonder whether Jade had been lying about his inability to control his powers before, but the others reasoned that there would be no point in such lies. Despite their trust in Jade, Galley questioned the authenticity of the letter. But Ren, however, insisted that Jade wouldn't want to trap them and suggested that he must have learned to control his abilities. Lloyd pointed out that if Jade could already control his power, there wouldn't be a need for him to tag along, which saddened Ren, but Lloyd proceeded to reassure her, saying that he would still accompany them because teleportation intrigued him. He then noticed Ren's concern about the possibility of betrayal and promised to handle it if anything went wrong. This reassurance comforted the group, and they expressed their relief and gratitude for Lloyd's decision to join them. Observing Ren's reaction, the others teased her, noticing that she was making the face of a maiden in love. As they land near Lordos, Lloyd notices the exhaustion of the others from the high-speed journey. Grimoire then suggests they walk the rest of the way if the others are too tired to fly, which Lloyd agreed to. Ren, however, volunteers to gather food from the woods, and Babylon tells Lloyd that Ren is likely trying to impress him. Babylon then shares Ren's backstory, explaining how her poison accidentally killed her parents when she was young, leaving her to live alone in the forest. However, one day, Jade returned to the guild with Ren. He embraced her despite knowing the risks of her poison. But despite initial doubts from the others, Jade insisted on helping Ren, eventually creating clothes to contain her poison, which deeply moved Ren, who considered them family ever since. Lloyd then proceeds to observe Ren's cloak and expresses his interest in meeting Jade. Grimoire is surprised by Lloyd's curiosity about another human, but Ren prepares food for everyone, though it doesn't look appetizing. Babylon, however, suggests using Crow's cursed speech to enhance the taste, but Ren stops him, insisting her stew is good as it is. Teria also worries that the food might not suit Lloyd's taste, given his royal status, but Lloyd enjoys it, remarking that he's eaten worse things in his past life when he was poor. Despite the humble appearance of the meal, Lloyd appreciates the gesture and company of the group. Ren is delighted to see everyone enjoying her cooking and expresses her hope that Jade will have the chance to try it someday. She then recalls a time when Jade informed them that the Adventurers Guild was considering lifting the bounties on their heads. Though the news brought joy to the group, Jade admitted that he needed to confess something to them. Jade revealed that he was actually the third son of Lordost, a noble family. He also confessed that he approached them to use their abilities in his efforts to prevent the impending war orchestrated by his family. Despite his revelation, the others were not surprised, as they had anticipated his backstory to be along those lines. Galilee then reflected that they had all faced hardships and lived as outlaws for a reason. Jade assured them that he had no intention of involving them in any personal problems against his family. Instead, he emphasized the importance of their goal to earn the right to live normal lives. He acknowledged the blessings of their time together and expressed his desire for them to continue the Assassin Guild's mission, even in his absence. Jade also shared his dream of transforming Lordos into a haven where blighted individuals could live happily. He promised to return as the Lord of Lordost and fulfill this vision, urging his comrades to keep the guild alive and not give up on their dreams. As they approach Lordos, Grim reflects on Jade's character, admiring him as an awesome individual. The scene then shifts to Lloyd sleeping while Galilee carries him, commenting on how ordinary he appears while resting. Grim, however, notes the heavy-duty barrier protecting Lloyd even in his sleep. Ren also suggests letting Lloyd rest while they scout the manor, expressing concern that Jade might be manipulated by the Lordos family. The group agrees, considering the possibility and deciding to leave Lloyd under Grim's watch. However, Grim insists on accompanying them, feeling responsible for Lloyd's safety. Arriving at the manor, they find preparations underway for a party, prompting them to consider returning later with Lloyd. Despite their intentions, they are noticed by a resident who invites them inside. Welcomed warmly, they are served fine cuisine, but as Grim was about to leave, Ren requests Grim to stay with her a while longer, feeling nervous about facing Jade again. When Jade finally arrives, they are relieved to see him well. He quickly changes into familiar clothes to put them at ease, impressing them with his mastery of teleportation. Ren then expresses her eagerness to talk with him, overwhelmed by the many things she wants to discuss. Suddenly, Jade reveals his true intentions and unleashes his power, which leaves the members of the Assassin Guild shocked and horrified. Jade's use of cursed speech surpasses even Crow's abilities, and they realize that something unusual is happening. Jade then reveals himself as a demonic figure named Gizarm, who boasts about his collection of blighted individuals and offers them as vessels for the demons inhabiting the manor. He points to Ren as a poison blighted and prepares to sacrifice her for the demons. But in a desperate attempt to stop him, Grim attacks Jade with his magic and urges everyone to escape. However, Jade easily overpowers Grim, leaving him wounded, landing beside the sleeping Lloyd, who wakes up to the chaos around him. As Lloyd learns about the situation from Grim, they witness shadowy figures emerging from the bodies of the possessed individuals. Galilee recognizes them as psychic life forms capable of infecting and controlling humans. Jade, now identifying himself as Gizarm, reveals his true identity as a demon from the netherworld. He explains that he sought Jade's body for its teleportation ability and spent months wearing down his mind to gain control. Despite Jade's resistance, Gazarm eventually succeeded using Jade's body to target his friends. Enraged and desperate, Ren confronts Gazarm, demanding to know what he did to Jade, but in response, Gazarm kicks her aside, revealing that Jade tried to end himself to protect his friends, but was healed every time. As Gazarm continues to taunt Ren and the other Blighted, he reveals the extent of his manipulation over their friend's body. Gazarm then proceeds to mention Ren's past to add to her pain, but soon notices the spell on her arm. He then demands information about the spell on Ren's arm, but Ren struggles to remain silent due to the cursed speech. Torn between loyalty to her friend and the overwhelming pressure from Gazarm's influence, she recalls the happy memories she shared with Jade, further strengthening her resolve to protect her friend's secrets. But just as Ren is on the verge of breaking, Lloyd suddenly arrives on the scene, using his formidable magical abilities to shield the Assassin Guild members with barriers and unleash a powerful spell that tears a hole in the manor. Ren is relieved to see Lloyd as he quickly heals her injury and demonstrates his care for her well-being. He urges the Blighted to flee, knowing they would only hinder his efforts against Gazarm. Initially, Ren hesitates to leave, but Galilei reminds her of the danger they face and the futility of fighting against such overwhelming odds. Meanwhile, Gazarm eliminates one of his own demons for questioning whether he was still alive. He then commands the remaining demons to pursue the assassins, recognizing their skill in evasion and the need to eliminate them before they become a threat again. Lloyd, undeterred by the odds stacked against him, confronts the demons head-on, demonstrating his determination to protect those in danger. But when faced with a deadly attack from two demons using cursed speech, Lloyd's quick thinking saves him as he dodges the attack, leading to the demise of one of the demons. However, Grimm warns Lloyd about the true nature of Gazarm's power, explaining that it bypasses conventional magical defenses and directly affects the victims. Despite understanding the gravity of the situation, Lloyd remains resolute in his determination to confront Gazarm and put an end to his reign of terror. Using his magic to analyze Gazarm's abilities, he then highlights the dangers it presents. He explains that Gazarm's manipulation of mana directly bypasses traditional barriers, likening it to water slipping through a sieve. This makes Gazarm's attacks far more dangerous and difficult to defend against compared to normal magic. Grimm's explanation further explains the threat. He clarifies that demons are ranked from the 10th to the 1st class, with higher classes being more formidable. While most of Gazarm's lackeys are weak 10th class demons easily handled by sorcery, Gazarm himself is a demon lord, a member of Netherworld royalty. Grimm warns Lloyd that even 100 first-class demons would be no match for Gazarm, emphasizing his catastrophic power. Despite Grimm's insistence that Lloyd should run, Lloyd's determination to face Gazarm does not waver. As he approaches Gazarm, the Demon Lord questions his identity, vaguely recalling something about Lloyd from Jade's memories. Lloyd introduces himself as the 7th Prince and expresses his regret that he never got the chance to meet Jade, blaming him for the situation. The confrontation between Lloyd and Gazarm intensifies as they exchange accusations. Gazarm dismisses Lloyd's interference as a disruption to his plans and lair, while Lloyd argues that Gazarm's pursuit of the Assassin Guild, who represent new frontiers in sorcery, is the true main issue. Grimm, deeply concerned, advises Lloyd to retreat again, emphasizing the overwhelming odds against them. He explains that using sorcery against a demon like Gazarm is akin to trying to attack a fish with water. While high-pressure mana might affect lesser demons, Gazarm, who thrives in the depths of sorcery, finds such attacks as mere annoyances. Gazarm then demonstrates his power by launching a barrage of mana arrows at Lloyd, effortlessly piercing multiple layers of Lloyd's barrier. Despite this, Lloyd manages to dodge most of the arrows, though some almost penetrating his defenses. Gazarm teleports above Lloyd, breaking his barrier with a kick, and then attacks with more arrows. Lloyd, however, responds with earth magic, erecting a shield to block the onslaught. The Assassin Guild, witnessing the battle, is awestruck by the display of power from both the monsters. The demons, meanwhile, refocus on their original mission to capture the assassins. Seeing this, Galilei urges Babylon to quickly open the gates of the fort to facilitate their escape. As the fight progresses, Grimm's fear intensifies, especially after seeing Gazarm easily break through Lloyd's defenses. Gazarm, however, is surprised that Lloyd remains unharmed and realizes that the only thing Lloyd reacted to was his teleportation magic. Lloyd then points out that this ability doesn't truly belong to Gazarm, implying it's stolen from Jade. However, Gazarm arrogantly claims that Jade lacked the necessary control over the power, whereas he, a demon born as a master of mana, finds it trivial to wield. He explains that while humans need abstractions and spells to master such abilities, his kind are already proficient, making complex sorcery simple for them. He compares the Blighted to birds born with wings but lacking the wisdom to use them effectively. He believes that the Blighted should offer themselves as vessels for demons, as they are even hated and feared by their own kind. Gazarim sees this as the Blighted's path to perfection and intends to demonstrate it to Lloyd. He then attacks Lloyd with teleported arrows, embedding them into Lloyd's body and revealing that he named the arrows after Jade. Meanwhile, Galloway uses his sticky thread magic to temporarily restrain the demon lackeys, buying time for the Assassin Guild to escape. Despite their efforts, the demons manage to free themselves just as Babylon opens the gates for the guild to flee. Ren and Crow head to the other side of the gate, but before the rest can follow, the demons threaten to pursue them. Teria takes matters into her own hands, using her powers to hurt all the demons at once by injuring herself, while urging the others to hide in the forest and hide their presence there. As Teria prepares to sacrifice herself to take down the demons, Galloway insists on staying by her side to support her. He closes the gate to prevent the demons from escaping and offers his assistance to Teria in her final stand. Despite Ren's protests, Teria is determined to show the demons the extent of their capabilities and the resolve they possess. As Teria attempts to sever her own head to unleash a lethal blow against the demons, Galloway fends off their attacks to protect her. Ren desperately tries to convince Teria to reconsider, reminding her of their newfound control over their curses and the hope for a better future. However, Teria remains resolute in her decision. As Gazarim observes Lloyd's clone crumbling to pieces, he realizes that it was merely a decoy, followed by Lloyd's sudden attack, almost slashing Gazarim using his sword. However, Gazarim effortlessly evades Lloyd's attack and continues to taunt Lloyd. But despite Lloyd's determination, he senses something that could potentially go bad and proposes relocating the fight to another location. The arrival of the Solemn army brings a sudden shift in the conflict. Led by Silpha, Albert, and Dian, the soldiers engage the demons in combat. Albert, realizing the unexpected turn of events, seeks to locate his brother, Lloyd, and orders the Spellbound Sword unit to join him in rescuing him from the midst of the chaos. As Albert orders his warriors to advance and vanquish any demons that stand in their path, Ren sobs with relief at the sight of reinforcements. Meanwhile, we are shown a flashback where Silpha, determined to improve her combat abilities, takes her sword to the training ground. She swiftly strikes at a hay bale that is magically compressed, but her sword always bends when she puts too much strength into her swing. Despite cutting through the hay bale, she isn't satisfied, knowing that in a real fight she can afford to hold back against stronger opponents. Back at the battle, Prince Albert and his reinforcements arrive, much to Ren's relief. Crow, however, recognizes Silpha from a previous encounter. But the relief is short-lived as Albert and Silpha turn their attention to the Assassin's Guild, accusing them of kidnapping Lloyd. Dian suggests prioritizing the demons, but Silpha insists on dealing with the Assassin's Guild first, believing they need to end their supposed evil plans. She then threatens the guild members with her sword, demanding to know Lloyd's whereabouts. But Galloway immediately spills the beans, informing her that Lloyd is fighting in the manor. Prince Albert, curious about Lloyd's opponent, learns from Teria that Lloyd is fighting a demon on their behalf, and as Ren attempts to provide more details, Babylon quickly silences her, reminding her of their promise to Lloyd to keep his powers a secret. Ren recalls Lloyd's request during their time in the forest, where he asked them to keep his powers hidden from his family. He explained that standing out would hinder his learning of sorcery. Committed to their promise, Babylon insists they reveal as little as possible to Silpha. Silpha, unconvinced by their vague answers, grows impatient. She prepares to make Ren her first victim, demanding the truth. Ren, panicked, quickly tells her that Lloyd is fighting a no-name demon in the castle, with every Assassin's Guild member backing her story. But Silpha remains skeptical and advances on Ren, ready to make her the first victim. However, Prince Albert stops Silpha, and the Assassin's Guild members feel a fleeting sense of gratitude, believing he is convinced by their story. He then reveals Lloyd's underwear, claiming it's a lie that Lloyd would fight for people who hung up his underwear as a warning. Galloway awkwardly explains that Lloyd's underwear was stained with a white substance, so they had to wash and hang it up to dry. Hearing this, Silpha and Albert grow even more infuriated by this explanation and nearly go berserk. Ren quickly steps in, explaining their gratitude for Albert's aid and acknowledging the difficulty of gaining his trust. She tells them that the demons destroyed her family and the Assassin's Guild became her new family, explaining that the demons took Jade, an integral part of their family, which is why Lloyd is fighting for them. Her sincerity surprises everyone, but the moment is interrupted when a demon suddenly attacks. Aaliyah swiftly deals with the demon using her Fenrir, impressing the members of the Assassin's Guild. Ellie's then assures Silpha that she believes Ren's story as Luru, her Fenrir, would have attacked Ren if she had any ill intent. Albert decides to trust Luru's instincts and focuses on the demon horde, while Silpha is tasked with rescuing Lloyd. Ren realizes that Silpha discovering Lloyd's powers would break their promise and tries to convince Silpha that Lloyd is fighting a low-level demon. Silpha, however, threatens to hurt Ren if she doesn't let her go. Just then, a magic circle appears overhead, and a beam shoots out, destroying the bridge. Diane then points out that the demons are swimming towards the coast, and Albert realizes they are in a dangerous position if the demons get behind them, ordering everyone back to the coast. Meanwhile, Disarm, sensing the shift in the battlefield, taunts Lloyd, asking if he's pleased that Silpha won't be coming for him. He points out that he can't keep his eyes off Lloyd even when chaos surrounds them. Gazarm then launches a sudden attack, but Lloyd dodges and takes to the air. Grimoire soon notices Lloyd wielding a sword and wonders about his plan. Back at the coast, Albert's relentless fire attacks frustrate the demons, who beg for mercy, knowing they can't regenerate under the constant assault. But despite Diane's massive fireball attack, the demons remain resilient. He expresses his concern to Albert, noting that their troops will deplete their mana reserves if they continue their barrage, while also pointing out that sending Liru and Silpha into the mess isn't viable as it might endanger them. Albert, realizing the validity of Diane's concerns, looks around for Silpha and notices her absence. Meanwhile, on the bridge, Silpha and Shiro aims to reach Lloyd. Gaole, however, warns her that Shiro might not make the jump, and she acknowledges this, deciding to let Shiro jump with a rope. However, Shiro, eager to reunite with Lloyd, leaps without the rope, plunging into the water below. Seeing this, Silpha resolves to make the jump herself, but Gaole suggests she help Albert instead. But suddenly, a demon climbs up the broken bridge and attacks Silpha. She skillfully blocks the attacks, and the demon, impressed by her swordsmanship, reveals he is a rank 8 demon, higher than those she has previously faced. He boasts about being a master of a demonic blade form and vows to defeat her. Silpha, surprised that demons have ranks, wonders where the previous demon she fought would rank. She offers the demon some advice, but he dismisses her, arrogantly stating that even a mosquito is more intimidating. She then points out that he has some poop on his head, infuriating him and sending him into a fit of rage. Back at the battle, the troops continue their fireball barrage, but Albert grows increasingly concerned about the possessed bodies of the people of Lost. As he contemplates a way to save them, a demon suddenly ambushes him from behind, catching him by surprise. He tried to draw out his sword, but it was too late. However, Babylon intervenes swiftly, incapacitating the demon effortlessly. Though grateful, Albert is taken aback by Babylon's readiness to take a life. Babylon compares Albert's kindness to Jade's, noting their refusal to disrespect life despite being outcasts. He explains that their enemies are beyond salvation, as their hearts are consumed by the demons, rendering them little more than demons in human guise. Albert appreciates Babylon's insight and strides towards the demon horde with determination. Apologizing to the people of Lordos for being late, Albert begins casting a powerful spell to free them from demonic possession. Flames cascade from the sky, engulfing the demons as Albert urges the troops forward without hesitation. Exhaustion threatens to overwhelm him, but Diane lends her support as they charge into battle, and Albert warns his comrades not to allow the demons any respite from their onslaught. Back at the bridge, Silpha confronts the demon head-on, parrying his attacks skillfully. Despite their matched prowess, the demon regenerates swiftly, claiming that demons can push human bodies beyond their natural limits. The demon sets his sights on possessing Silpha, intrigued by her abilities. He showcases mastery of various sword techniques, attributing them to the skills of the body's previous owner. Continuing to taunt Silpha, he claims that humans are merely vessels for demons, vowing to wear her down until she's nothing but tatters. Gaole is angered at the demon's disregard for human life, but the demon dismisses his anger. Silpha, seizing the moment, leaps into action, unleashing a demon blade technique that catches the demon off guard. Though he manages to block it, he's taken aback by Silpha's being able to use it as well. Silpha then reveals that she learned the technique simply by observing him, mocking his reliance on acquiring new techniques through possessing new bodies. She then calls upon Shiro, who has returned and retrieves a sword specially crafted for her by Lloyd. Brandishing the sword named Demon Bane, Silpha recalls the moment when Lloyd and Diane presented it to her as thanks for her assistance in crafting enchanted swords. They designed it to withstand her full strength, ensuring it could take down a demon with a single powerful strike. Lloyd's thoughtful gesture was to help her overcome her tendency to hold back in battle. Drawing Demon Bane from its scabbard, Silpha defies the demon's assertion that she cannot defeat demons. He reveals the demon's sinister plan to plunge the country into chaos for their own amusement, using a declaration of war to lure Jade back to his hometown. The members of the Assassin's Guild vow revenge for being manipulated, but Silpha intervenes, determined to thwart the demon's schemes. With resolve, she assumes her stance, prompting the demon to unleash his most advanced technique. Meeting his attack head-on, Silpha executes her own technique flawlessly, effortlessly vanquishing the demon to the astonishment of onlookers. The story rewinds to the moments before Jade's death. where Jade, facing his end, declares that he has finally accomplished something significant. Gazarim, sensing Jade's weakness, asks if he has made peace with his death. With his final breath, Jade warns Gazarim that he won't get away with his actions and that he is destined to lose. He finally dies, and Gazarim fully takes control of his body. As Gazarim assimilates Jade's power and memories, he discovers Jade's friends embedded deeply within his consciousness, preventing him from accessing something even deeper. Intrigued but unable to delve further, Gazarim is interrupted by a sword demon who congratulates him on his newfound control. The sword demon asks for their next move, and Gazarim, knowing Jade's aversion to war, decides to start a massive conflict. Returning to the present, Silpha sits beside the body of the sword demon. She comments on the formidable skill the previous owner must have had and expresses a desire to have sparred with him using his Lordo style. Noticing Ren crying, Silpha asks if she knew the fallen swordsman. Ren, despite not knowing him, feels a sense of sorrow, believing he found peace in the end. Upon seeing this, Silpha suggests that the group isn't suited for assassination, while Galley and Crow realize that Silpha is actually the renowned Silver Blade. Suddenly, the lake's water turns to steam, causing shock among the group. Meanwhile, above, Lloyd hovers, trying to see through the dense steam. He recalls being bombarded by Gazarim's mana spears, which could easily penetrate his barriers. Realizing he must maintain a reinforced barrier at all times, Lloyd understands that Gazarim's cursed speech can also travel through these spears, complicating his defense strategy. Lloyd identifies that he must not only block the attacks but also keep moving to avoid the dangerous Shadow Wolf attack. Noting that if he slows down for more than 2 seconds, Gazarim will lock onto him with this lethal assault. He quickly evaluates his options, realizing that if he were in Gazarim's place, he would continue an all-out offensive until his target exhausted their stamina. This aggressive strategy annoys Lloyd, prompting him to switch to attacking. Lloyd then employs double casting, deploying a fire spell in under 2 seconds. While Gazarim knows the fire wouldn't kill him, he still dodges to avoid his clothes burning. The misfire spell then evaporates the entire river, surprising Lloyd. Back in the present, Lloyd uses his spatial detection K technique to search for Gazarim, knowing he needs to track him constantly due to the Shadow Wolf's teleportation ability. He finds Gazarim and wonders about his positioning. Grim, however, warns Lloyd to keep moving, but Lloyd questions why Gazarim didn't attack him during his brief stop. He speculates that Gazarim might be using his line of sight to locate targets, implying the steam can be advantageous for Lloyd. He then stops moving, causing Grim to worry, but to their surprise, no attacks come. Lloyd deduces that Gazarim indeed needs to see his target to attack and decides that he must get close enough to attack with his sword. On the other hand, Gazarim, unable to see through the steam, waits for Lloyd to reveal himself. Lloyd then employs his strategy using earth clones, each wielding swords, causing Gazarim, who's unable to distinguish the real one, to face a barrage of attacks. He eventually identifies the real Lloyd by the feel of a real sword. Remarking that Lloyd's use of physical attacks is futile, he explains that magic and physical attacks won't affect him due to his regeneration ability. He recounts how he dealt with Jade's suicide attempts, and how he can harden his body to be as tough as iron, before revealing that he allowed Lloyd to stab him only to identify the real one among the clones. Gazarim acknowledges Lloyd's cleverness in managing to harm his body even for an instant. However, he realizes that the Lloyd he just killed was another clone, and that Lloyd had given his real sword to one of the clones, making it difficult to identify the real Lloyd. Gazarim then calculates that the safest position for Lloyd should be above, where he would have a strategic view of the battlefield, but is taken by surprise when the real Lloyd attacks him from the left with fire magic. Lloyd continues to shuffle his position with his clones, creating confusion for Gazarim. But despite Gazarim's ability to teleport without seeing his destination, he is unable to teleport to uncertain locations, which means Lloyd's decoys have effectively neutralized his Shadow Wolf ability. However, he notes that his clones are limited to basic movements, but he has a plan to use them effectively. Gazarim then counters by using his mana spears to attack all the clones, but one of his spears is stopped by a heavy-duty barrier. Assuming the Lloyd inside the barrier is the real one, Gazarim attacks relentlessly, only to discover that it is another fake. Realizing that some decoys were given barriers while others do not, Gazarim concludes that the real Lloyd must be among the shielded ones, as running around without protection in this onslaught would be idiotic. This made him find the battle more entertaining than fighting a demonic legion, and speculates that the 7th Prince must also feel similarly. However, in reality, Lloyd uses a spell to hide his presence, allowing him to close in on Gazarim while dodging attacks. He doesn't have a barrier around him, which worries Grim, who wonders what Lloyd is trying to achieve by taking such a risk. Grim then recalls Lloyd explaining that his sword has the ability called Spell Taker, which can absorb spells and either analyze them or use them to increase their mana, which would help him study all kinds of magic. Lloyd, having successfully analyzed Gazarm's Shadow Wolf spell, cuts through the teleportation magic with his sword. Amazed at Lloyd's audacity, Grimm notes that Lloyd is the biggest magic maniac he knows. He acknowledges that Lloyd's relentless pursuit of undiscovered magic drives him forward, making him the only person Grimm has ever truly respected. As Lloyd finishes analyzing the Shadow Wolf spell, he disperses his clones, revealing his real self. Gazarm, noticing Lloyd's bloody cheek and lack of a barrier, realizes that Lloyd had been hiding using a spell. Puzzled by Lloyd's determination, Gazarm asks why he continues to fight. He assumes it can't be out of pity for the others and suggests that Lloyd is broken like him and invites Lloyd to join him in conquering the world. To his surprise, Lloyd dismisses the offer, calling Gazarm's methods boring and plain. He explains that while humans may be weak, their struggles drive them to create incredible things, and magic is a prime example of this limitless potential and infinite interest. Gazarm, angered by Lloyd's explanation, attacks with his Shadow Wolf. However, Lloyd counters by punching Gazarm in the gut using his key techniques. He explains that he used sorcery to enhance his lungs and increase the ki in his attack, emphasizing that sorcery evolves by learning from all fields of knowledge and phenomena. Gazarm, infuriated by Lloyd's confidence, wonders how Lloyd knew where he would teleport. Lloyd, undeterred, challenges Gazarm to show him something new, urging him to get back on his feet. Angered by a human rushing him, Gazarm feels his pride wounded and prepares for another round of combat. Lloyd continues his relentless assault on Gazarm, each strike driving home the realization that he is not just powerful, but also deeply strategic. Gazarm's attempts to use Shadow Wolf for teleportation are consistently thwarted, with Lloyd accurately predicting and countering each move. He recalls the moment when Jade, with his last breath, told Gazarm he was going to lose. This memory shakes Gazarm, fueling his determination to prove Jade wrong. Filled with desperation, he launches another Shadow Wolf attack, but Lloyd continues to counter him, delivering a series of powerful blows. He sends Gazarm flying with a magic attack, directing him towards a hole filled with magma which Lloyd had created earlier. As Lloyd pummels Gazarm, he reflects on his lifelong fascination with magic. He recalls how spell books have always ignited his imagination, making him wonder of the creators of those spells. These flashbacks were not just idle thoughts, as they drove him to seek out people like Jade, individuals who embody the pinnacle of magic. He taunts Gazarm, questioning if he has truly run out of ideas, and expresses disappointment, declaring that if Gazarm cannot present a new challenge, he will have to die. Despite his battered state, Gazarm warns Lloyd not to underestimate him and explains the difference between a demon and a demon lord. Harnessing the ability to freely control atmospheric mana, Gazarm conjures a massive sphere of mana, proclaiming that no barrier or spell can withstand this attack. But Lloyd effortlessly makes the mortal dark sphere vanish, leaving him astonished that someone like Lloyd could neutralize his powerful attack so easily. Lloyd then explains that he used a spell called Void, a technique similar to the mortal dark sphere that casts targets into another dimension, reducing them to dust. However, the only difference between their spells is the name. Gazarm refuses to believe that Lloyd, a mere human, can wield such a formidable spell. Lloyd then recounts his past experiments, where he collided two instances of void spells out of curiosity, but the spells simply vanished upon collision, leaving him disappointed, much like how he feels about Gazarm now. Enraged by Lloyd's nonchalance and power, Gazarm declares that having more mana doesn't make Lloyd any less of a trash, and attempts to take possession of Lloyd's body to utilize his immense mana pool. As Gazarm touches Lloyd, he is overwhelmed by the boundless mana within Lloyd. Unfazed, Lloyd questions whether he would die if hit with Void and proceeds to launch several Void spells, with one of the spells successfully hitting Gazarm. Meanwhile, Albert and Diane struggle to fight the demons in the steam created by Lloyd's earlier attacks, but Diane suggests that the steam might be hindering the demons as well, giving them an advantage. This is also the case for Leru, Shiro, and Silpha, who can use their enhanced senses to track and defeat the enemy. Silpha, however, notices the demons moving sluggishly and detects a sweet scent in the air. But suddenly, Ren warns everyone not to breathe in deeply as she has released her poison into the air. She then ensures that it doesn't reach her allies, but admits she doesn't have perfect control over it yet. Albert, unable to see clearly in the dense steam, muses that they might have better visibility if the sun were up, but as he checks the time, he is surprised as the sun should already be up by now. Diane, however, mentions that this is caused by the steam, but the Assassin's Guild members notice that the darkness above isn't the night sky, but Lloyd's mana spreading around. Meanwhile, Gazarm is being drawn into the Void spell and struggles to resist, but the spell absorbs any mana he tries to use. He considers abandoning his body, but soon finds he can't escape. Desperate, he pretends to be Jade, claiming he has regained control and pleading with Lloyd to stop the attack. However, Lloyd isn't fooled and casts another void spell from the opposite side, crushing Gazarm between the two spells. As Lloyd suppresses his mana, the sun finally breaks through, illuminating the battlefield, where suddenly Jade's spirit appears, thanking Lloyd and Grim. Seeing this, Ren recalls a conversation where Jade shared an urban legend about the 7th prince. He mentioned that on the day the prince was born, celebratory fireworks went off early, which was rumored to be due to a spell cast by the prince at birth. Initially, Galilei dismissed it as ridiculous gossip, but Jade found it fascinating. He hoped that if such a magical prodigy existed, they might lift them out of their curses and into the light. The scene shifts to Lloyd creating a grand grave for Jade, but Grim questions why it's so far from the others, and Lloyd explains that it's more of a memorial. He soon expresses admiration for Lloyd's successful use of the Void spell, noting its slow movement. But Lloyd credits his success to deciphering Shadow Wolf, which allowed him to detect when it was used. By linking this detection with his reflexes, he could automatically dodge and cast Void in response. Grim can't believe that Lloyd was able to figure out a complex spell like Shadow Wolf while toying with Gazarm, and Lloyd mentions that Gazarm was strong and admits it was foolish to try deciphering the spell in the middle of battle. But he needed to if he wanted to land an attack, as he wouldn't have been satisfied if he couldn't figure out the spell. However, all of this was only possible because Shadow Wolf was clearly laid out for him. He explains that at the end of his life, Jade actually managed to transcribe a complete spell for Shadow Wolf, leaving it behind thinking someone would rise to the challenge of overcoming it. He then humbly states that it wasn't him who won the fight, but it was Jade. Hearing this, Ren is moved to tears and thinks she needs to tell Lloyd how grateful she is. Albert then approaches Lloyd and asks whose grave it is, but soon realizes that it's the grave of the former leader of the Assassin's Guild and the previous ruler of Lordost, Jade. He reveals that he knows the whole story, stating that after learning of Jade's revolt, the Assassin's Guild came to Lloyd, an expert in sorcery, for help dealing with Jade. However, when they arrived, they encountered a horde of demons, and one of them was wearing Jade's body. He then continues by saying that the Assassin's Guild has told him how they've lived and their ambitions. Albert then mentions that he is proud of his little brother for helping them and for defeating a demon on his own. But he reminds him that things are not that simple. The members of the Assassin's Guild have been taken into custody, and Ren will be joining them once found, explaining that they are residents of the underworld who killed for a living and effectively kidnapped a member of the royal family, dragging him into a war, which are serious charges. However, the Assassin's Guild has said they want to make amends by serving Lloyd for the rest of their lives, and if that's not possible, they are ready to accept any punishment deemed necessary, leaving the decision to Lloyd. Albert tells Lloyd that this isn't like adopting a pet, as when these outlaws become his retainers and commit some blunder, Lloyd will be held responsible. He soon asks Lloyd for his decision, but Lloyd states that everything Albert said is quite reasonable and that he will take them under his wing, promising to take full responsibility for their actions. He accepts Lloyd's determination and tells Lloyd that being the 7th prince doesn't mean people don't care for him, reminding him that he shouldn't be so distant and should ask for help if he ever needs it, as before being a prince, he is Albert's little brother. However, Tao suddenly comes running, having heard that Lloyd was in trouble, only to find that the battle is over and everyone is safe. Embarrassed, she tries to run away, but Albert instructs Silpha to stop her, as they still haven't thanked her for her help the other day. She then chases after Tao, ensuring she doesn't leave. Grim then comments to Lloyd about his kindness in helping the Assassin's Guild, but Lloyd explains that he helped them because they embody potential new frontiers for magic, and he doesn't want any more possibilities like that to be snuffed out. After successfully capturing Tao, the soldiers release the members of the Assassin's Guild, and the guild members express their gratitude and pledge to serve Lloyd with all their might. The scene then transitions to a tea party, a request from Tao as her reward. However, Tao feels uneasy having a tea party beside a grave and is nervous being around so many princes and princesses. But Albert reassures her that it's just a casual gathering and encourages her to enjoy herself. Albert then also tells the members of the Assassin's Guild to relax and enjoy the gathering in their own way. Initially unsure, they soon start a chaotic celebration, drinking and mourning Jade in their style. Witnessing their lively spirit, Albert then suggests having a similar party at the palace someday. Teria then asks Albert if he's going to have any drinks, but he declines, citing his royal duties. However, disliking his formal approach, Teria uses her power to share being drunk with Albert, allowing him to let loose. This causes him to recall that Galilei still hasn't explained how Lloyd ended up covered in his white fluid and becomes angry at him. The scene then transitions to our beautiful mommy Silpha, Ren, and Elise, who are taking a dip in the hot springs created after Lloyd's fight. There, Silpha asks Ren if she has something to say as she followed them there. Ren then soon reveals that she wants to work alongside Lloyd and be near him to show her gratitude, promising not to disappoint him. But Silpha advises her that she must ask Lloyd directly. Lloyd, who had been brought along by Silpha to clean up, overhears their conversation and agrees to Ren's request. Surprised to see Lloyd there, Ren expresses her doubts about being accepted due to her past actions and being poison-blighted. But Lloyd reassures her, saying that she needs to stop calling herself blighted and understand her natural-born strength. He then suggests that by studying her poison, she could become a pharmacist and save lives, turning her poison into medicine. Later, back at the castle, Ren begins serving as Lloyd's maid alongside Silpha, and Albert creates a cover story for the king to keep Lloyd out of trouble, allowing Lloyd to continue his magical research. The anime then ends here with Lloyd pleased that his true power remains undiscovered, enabling him to pursue his passion for magic. The second season of this beautiful anime begins with Lloyd, a superpowered child, mysteriously absent from his room. Ren enters to call him for breakfast but only finds Grim and Shiro, the giant cat. Confused, she looks around until a white light beside her casually greets her. Startled, she suddenly disappears into the large cat. Lloyd then reveals himself in his true form, explaining that he had suppressed his mana to hide his presence, a technique he had mastered earlier. Ren praises his ability, knowing how it took her a whole year to learn the same thing, while he managed it with ease. She admits she's still shy and hasn't adjusted to working in the mansion, having only been there for 2 days. Though Silva had taught her proper etiquette, Ren still found it difficult, despite the delicious food and soft beds. She also had to learn sleeping etiquette, but vowed to keep trying to become the maid Lloyd could be proud of. Lloyd reassures her, saying she could be more relaxed when it's just the two of them. Suddenly, Silva appears, tidying the room and scolding Ren for not arranging things properly. Ren quickly apologizes. Outside, Lloyd and Grim are seen admiring a beautiful spiderweb. Lloyd reminds them of the importance of renovating the city, stating that he doesn't want it to fall into ruin. Though he understands that repairs will take time, he prefers everything to be done with care. Just then, Babylon arrives and everyone welcomes him warmly after a long absence. Grim proclaims himself a god, prompting others to chastise him for speaking such nonsense. They remind him that there is only one god and warn him not to speak that way again, or he won't be allowed near them. The group then visits the church, a place they had returned to in 2 years. Lloyd, hoping to study holy magic, expresses his desire to rejoin. The priest is visibly shocked, immediately recognizing him as the so-called demon spawned from years ago. However, one of the sisters, Escher, steps in and persuades the priest to forgive Lloyd's past mistakes and give him another chance. The priest agrees and assigns them a few tasks around the church, but it doesn't take long before Lloyd accidentally causes some objects to fall and break. He quickly apologizes to Escher, who gently reassures him that it was just an innocent mistake. However, upon closer inspection, she realizes that the broken item was her father's favorite decorative vase. Despite this, she calmly collects the shattered pieces without scolding him. Ren intervenes, suggesting that Escher shouldn't let Lloyd off so easily. Escher defends him, describing him as a kind boy obsessed with magic to the point of neglecting everything else. He once spent a lot of money learning new spells and even joined the church for that purpose. Escher recalls how he used to break vases, hoping she would kill him with a spell, but she never did, believing that such powers should only be used against real villains. Despite everything, she remains proud of him and his willingness to be disciplined. As the day progresses, Escher proposes a choreo performance, but Lloyd excuses himself. Just then, a demonic creature attacks, targeting Lloyd and the group. However, no one is harmed. In the present timeline, Escher recalls how Lloyd later confessed to his mistakes and was expelled from the church for damaging her father's belongings. People began calling him the Devil's Chick, but Escher knows the truth. Lloyd is a good person. She decides to invite him to dinner, where he can meet the choir. Later, Lloyd is seen discarding the broken vase pieces when he comes across a girl being harassed by 2 men over a minor accident. As he looks closer, he recognizes the girl. It's his sister, Saria. The men demand she pay medical bills, but Saria ignores them and walks away. Ren and her friends arrive, confirming that the girl is indeed Lloyd's sister. He identifies her as the 4th princess of the kingdom of Solemn and a musical prodigy, proficient in all instruments but lacking knowledge of anything else, which makes dealing with her exhausting. Back on the street, the same men continue berating Saria. One of them boasts about how no one can beat him in making women scream from his attacks. Escher rushes in and punches him, calling Saria her best friend and not some musical instrument to be mishandled. She worries that the choreo performance might be cancelled, as Saria is meant to perform alongside her. Grim speaks to Lloyd privately, asking if he could use his spells through ritual rather than a mana signature, proposing it might help others. Lloyd, determined to keep the performance on track, begins to think through his options. Saria chimes in, criticizing Escher's crying as a musical dissonance. She encourages her to sing instead and insists that the best music from Escher comes when she plays the piano. Ren then uses her power to put the troublemakers to sleep. Lloyd praises her for controlling her ability well, noting it as an advanced application of mana suppression. By opening only one outlet during suppression, she increased pressure and improved targeting. Moreover, she had successfully converted her poison ability into a sleeping gas. However, the criminals quickly wake up as Ren hasn't fully mastered her ability to produce poison in sufficient quantities yet. Later, Lloyd is seen discarding the broken vase pieces when he comes across a girl being harassed by two men over a minor accident. As he looks closer, he recognizes the girl. It's his sister, Saria. The men demand she pay medical bills, but Saria ignores them and walks away. Ren and her friends arrive, confirming that the girl is indeed Lloyd's sister. He identifies her as the fourth princess of the kingdom of Solemn and a musical prodigy, proficient in all instruments but lacking knowledge of anything else, which makes dealing with her exhausting. Back on the street, the same men continue berating Saria. One of them boasts about how no one can beat him in making women scream from his attacks. Escher rushes in and punches him, calling Saria her best friend and not some musical instrument to be mishandled. She worries that the court performance might be cancelled, as Saria is meant to perform alongside her. Grimm speaks to Lloyd privately, asking if he could use his spells through ritual rather than a mana signature, proposing it might help others. Lloyd, determined to keep the performance on track, begins to think through his options. Saria chimes in, criticizing Escher's crying as a musical dissonance. She encourages her to sing instead and insists that the best music from Escher. Our second chapter opens in the breathtaking, silent expanse of heaven. There, Lloyd floated amidst the stardusted void. It was in this vast, cosmic emptiness that he encountered a magnificent and otherworldly being, feathered wings outstretched, an ethereal glow radiating from its form. The being was unmistakably angelic, a creature of legend. Without hesitation, Lloyd seized the entity and with a flick of his wrist, sent it tumbling through a cosmic cloud. A celestial figure, dazed and enraged, regained composure and voiced its indignation, demanding to know who dared assault it so brazenly. Yet when its gaze locked onto Lloyd's human form, his fury turned to disbelief. A mortal. Impossible. This domain had been fortified with countless barriers and impenetrable defenses to keep humanity out. The angel demanded an explanation, questioning what sorcery or forbidden path Lloyd had used to breach the Iron Dome. But Lloyd, unfazed, showed little concern for how he had arrived. Instead, he expressed interest in learning from the angel. This audacity wounded the celestial being's pride. It scoffed at Lloyd's demand for tutelage and instead prepared to demonstrate its full might. A surge of energy gathered in the angel's grasp, threatening to overwhelm. Yet Lloyd stood ready, immediately erecting a formidable firewall composed of high-level ancient heritage magic. Back on Earth, a scene of anxiety unfolded. Lloyd's friends paced restlessly, most notably Ren, whose worry could barely be concealed. Doubts clouded their thoughts. Had Lloyd truly flown off into the vastness of space? Words of comfort passed between them, though they rang hollow. Even a wise Babylon urged calm, insisting that panic would serve no one. The story returned to the battlefield above. The duel between Lloyd and the celestial warrior had erupted into a furious confrontation. The angel launched 4 ethereal arrows, each one pulsing with destructive energy and slicing through the void like missiles. Lloyd parried them with ease. The angel watched, stunned by the defenses Lloyd summoned, realizing the human must be channeling an immense reservoir of mana to manifest so many protective swords. Lloyd did not speak. He answered with action, unleashing a counterattack of such magnitude that it cracked the very dimensional fabric around them. He then performed a technique both mysterious and fearsome, drawing an object from his own mouth, channeling an ancient power. With a quiet finality, Lloyd summoned the Shadow Wolf, a colossal beast composed entirely of darkness and raw energy. The creature's presence threatened to incinerate the entire region of space, its radiance a hellish blaze. At the last moment, the angel dodged and retreated, barely escaping the cataclysmic assault. Grimm's voice crackled through a nearby communication channel, cheering Lloyd's performance with astonishment. He asked whether Lloyd had truly intended to eliminate the celestial being. Lloyd responded calmly, stating his intent was not to kill, only to neutralize. He then released a more controlled burst of fiery energy. Grimm, taking to the open channel, addressed the angel directly. He explained that Prince Lloyd desired only knowledge, not bloodshed. He urged surrender, but the winged being refused, channeling what little power remained in a desperate surprise assault. Lloyd, without effort, summoned another impenetrable barrier. The attack vanished upon impact, harmless. The angel's strength failed, its light dimmed, and Lloyd stood victorious. But instead of delivering a final blow, he extended his hand and shared his energy, stabilizing the fallen being. It was a pure act of power transference, like charging a dead battery. The angel, confused and weak, questioned the gesture. Why spare an enemy? Lloyd offered no justification other than a simple creed: help when you can. Staggered by the gesture, the celestial being relented. He agreed to teach Lloyd, but with a condition, a pact. He requested Lloyd's hand, then dissolved into pure light and merged with him, embedding his essence within Lloyd's palm. The implications of the pact remain uncertain. Was the angel seeking a vessel to infiltrate Earth? Was this a reconnaissance mission in disguise? The answers were hidden behind the being's cryptic intentions. Now bound to Lloyd, the angel confirmed the link. He would respond to thought, remain ever-present, and serve as Lloyd's unseen eye. But beneath the surface, a darker truth lurked. Within the safety of his host, the celestial warrior laughed to himself, masking malice and thought. Lloyd, he believed, was a fool who had unknowingly welcomed chaos. Elsewhere, Grimm watched the fluctuation in Lloyd's aura with shock. With this power, Lloyd could challenge even the demon lord. Eager to test his abilities, Lloyd ascended further into the sky, pushing beyond skyscraper heights to the apex of the world. Here, he began experimenting. Drawing on his new pact, he manifested a monstrous, octopus-like creature of pure energy. The being took shape slowly, its shadow engulfing the landscape. Panic erupted below. Grimm, gripped by terror, shouted through the communicator, urging Lloyd to halt the summoning. But Lloyd, despite the strain in his voice, insisted that the construct was incomplete. Suddenly, the story returned to Earth. One of Lloyd's companions looked skyward, marveling at the echoes of distant thunder, residual from Lloyd's battle. As he pondered the phenomenon, a strange man appeared beside him. Polite yet unsettling, the man offered to escort him back to the main church. The friend hesitated but agreed, on the condition that the man reveal his identity. The stranger claimed to be a guide, someone who served quietly in the background for many years. But it was clear to all that he was hiding more than he let on. At that moment, Babylon and her group arrived. Shiro, the great white wolf, immediately reacted. He growled, fur bristling, instincts flaring with danger. Something about the stranger was deeply wrong. Then the sonic boom shattered the air. Lloyd descended from the heavens at rocket speed, blazing past the stranger. For a brief moment, a silent tension passed between the two, an unspoken recognition of power. Celebration erupted as Lloyd rejoined his friends. Relief and joy filled the air, yet Babylon remained wary. Her sharp mind worked rapidly. The stranger's appearance, Shiro's fear. It all added up. Was the man an assassin? Was he here for Lloyd? Or someone else entirely? The camera shifted once more to the enigmatic figure now standing alone. His face twisted in silent rage. His cover might have been compromised, and whatever he had planned was far from over. When the angel met Lloyd's friends for the first time, he did not hide his disdain. To him, these beings were no more than unruly barbarians, and the idea of having to form a pact with them was utterly displeasing. Lloyd, however, reminded him that his research into sacred magic would progress more efficiently with a larger team. He requested the angel's assistance in helping his friends use magic, without meaning to forge a pact like the one they had. The angel scoffed at the suggestion, making it clear that Lloyd was a unique exception. He had no intention of entering into another pact with any other being. But Lloyd interrupted, pointing out that the angel's current form was far too conspicuous. He urged the angel to adopt a less noticeable appearance. Reacting quickly and somewhat vainly, the angel transformed into a small, adorable creature, assuming it would be enough to capture Lloyd's attention. Yet to his dismay, Lloyd didn't even notice the change. Later, Lloyd encountered the citizens of Lordos once again. The memory of their past disagreements stirred unrest among them. Talia, embarrassed by their behavior, apologized on their behalf, admitting that the people of Lordos were often difficult to handle. One of the troublemakers questioned why Talia would bow before a boy like Lloyd. However, they were abruptly halted by a radiant glow emanating from Lloyd. As the glow enveloped them, the two men underwent a strange transformation, shifting from water to wine. Their aggressive demeanor softened, and they suddenly became more attentive and kind. Talia, witnessing the shift, was stunned. Lloyd's magic had changed the personalities of the people of Lordos, something she once thought impossible. Babylon remained at the church. There he took it upon himself to cook for the sisters, gradually earning their trust as he worked to mend the church's damaged reputation. Lloyd, meanwhile, had run off, avoiding both his duties and the church. Grimm, annoyed by the angel's restlessness, warned him to behave if he wanted to continue living among them peacefully. Suddenly, another Lloyd called out to the servants, requesting tea. The angel, confused, asked what he was witnessing. Grimm clarified that this was a wooden doll, a clone Lloyd had created to handle simple tasks in his place. Eventually, the real Lloyd returned to his quarters and announced the need to initiate a ghoul hunt. Sacred magic needed testing, and the undead made perfect targets. Grim reminded him that ghouls were not easy to find, but Lloyd explained that he had already gathered sufficient information about them during his stay in Lordost. Summoning Silpha to his room, Lloyd made a direct request. He wanted her to accompany him on the ghoul hunt. Silpha, hearing the sudden proposal, said nothing and ran out of the room. Moments later, she returned with her sword in hand, prepared for the mission and ready to depart at any moment. Lloyd and his companions set out on their new journey, heading toward the Great Dan Bridge, a location identified by the Adventurers Guild as having the highest number of ghoul sightings. Along the way, Lloyd grew impatient with the lack of progress. He asked Silpha to use her sense of smell to locate the ghoul lair more quickly, but she reminded him that the monster's stench was nearly indistinguishable from rotting food. Lloyd acknowledged that his presence detection was also unreliable in crowded areas. Suddenly, they were approached by Sarah and Cher, who claimed they were only in the area for lunch and invited Lloyd to join them. When Sarah mentioned pancakes, Lloyd's eyes lit up with excitement. Lloyd, in turn, defended his fascination with food. He declared that pancakes were magical objects in their own right. Basic ingredients, transformed into something delicious, were for him a feat comparable to magic itself. Sarah deduced that it was Lloyd's first time trying pancakes and advised him to start with a plain version to appreciate the base flavor first. During the meal, Sarah asked what they were doing in the area. Lloyd and the others answered truthfully. They were there to hunt ghouls. According to witnesses, the creatures were most frequently sighted at the Great Dan Bridge, the Northern Cemetery, and the Southern Alleys. Eventually, Lloyd and his group arrived at the Dan Bridge and decided to investigate the sewers below. Silpha used her sense of smell to confirm the presence of ghouls. However, the overwhelming stench nearly knocked her out, affirming that the creatures were indeed hiding there. Lloyd then expressed concern over something he had heard. Silpha guessed correctly. He was thinking about the missing adventurers in the area. Lloyd confirmed her suspicion, revealing that one of his adventurer friends had recently disappeared. At that moment, he was caught off guard by Tao, who leaped at him upon recognizing his presence. Silpha quickly slapped Tao on the head, reminding her that the real reason for this hunt was to test sacred magic. She dismissed Tao as a mere supporting character. Lloyd questioned the surroundings and confirmed with Tao that the sewers were indeed the ghoul lair. Tao began to cry, explaining that she had gotten lost in the filthy tunnels, but had managed to find her way by sensing Lloyd's presence. After they exited the sewers, Tao declared that she needed to return to her quarters to retrieve her lantern. However, Lloyd cast a purification spell known as Sunlight, creating a luminous halo over her head. The halo illuminated the area and cleansed the air and ground, allowing Tao to finally breathe deeply and channel her chi more effectively. Shiro decided to continue the ghoul search on his own, but Lloyd noticed that the surrounding stench would likely hinder Shiro's sense of smell. To help, Lloyd activated his presence detection to scan the area. During the process, Tao interrupted him, recognizing a specific breathing technique. She asked where he had learned it, and Lloyd replied that he had learned it from Silpha, further angering Tao. Silpha quickly subdued Tao with a few more slaps. Lloyd shifted the conversation to inquire about the Demon Slayer's sword. Silpha revealed that she had left it at home, wanting to preserve its cleanliness. Meanwhile, Tao, still displaying her immaturity, challenged Silpha to a game to determine who was stronger. Silpha reminded her that the mission's goal was to test sacred magic, not engage in childish competitions. Tao, persistent as ever, proposed a simple game. Whoever killed the most ghouls would earn a one-on-one meeting with Lloyd as a reward for their help in the experiment. The hunt resumed and Tao surged ahead, killing multiple ghouls. But Silpha soon intervened, stealing some of the kills and mirroring Tao's movements. Tao became increasingly irritated, accusing her of copying her. Silpha, unfazed, claimed she was simply testing her weapon's sharpness. Despite the bickering, both girls silently acknowledged each other's skill. Tao admired Silpha's precision despite her not using Ki or magic. Silpha, too, was impressed by Tao's effectiveness, though she kept it to herself. On the sidelines, Ren observed the two with admiration. Attempting to join the battle, he attacked a ghoul with his poisoned sword but failed to kill it. Lloyd tossed him a new weapon, one imbued with both poison and holy magic. With this blade, Ren was finally able to slay the ghouls effectively. By the end of the skirmish, all three girls were tied in score, with only one enemy remaining. Each of them sprinted toward the final ghoul, determined to claim victory and earn their private audience with Lloyd. Meanwhile, in a different part of the church, a man was seen capturing the priest. His intentions were clear. He planned to take over the priest's body and roam freely. But before he could succeed, Sarah arrived and caught sight of the sinister act, shocked by what she witnessed. When Tao attempted to attack the creature, she suddenly found herself sitting down involuntarily, as though controlled by the monster. Silpha appeared right behind her, cutting the threads the monster had used to force her into submission. Ren, watching the scene unfold, finally understood what was happening to them, but found it difficult to believe that a creature could possess such power. As the same type of thread was launched toward Lloyd, he caught it, examined it closely, and discovered that the wires originated from the monster's spinal cord. Upon learning this, Ren realized they might be dealing with a familiar monster. She recalled an old tale about the mutant born in a small province, whose body could generate an infinite number of spinal cords made of mana. When these cords touched a person's limbs, they would interfere with the motor nerves and override the brain's commands. Wrapped in skin, these spinal cords also contained mana formulas for evasion and counterattack, enabling the mutant to move faster than thought itself. So dangerous was the creature that it had once been used as a biological weapon during a civil war, a thought that left Ren deeply unsettled. Jade explained that the neuron mutant, much like the group, had been unable to control his own power. However, in this creature's case, the imbalance was extreme. Its abilities could destroy friend and foe alike. Even after being shot in the heart, it was said to have continued killing out of sheer automatic reflex, becoming an untouchable undead. The only way to stop it had been to destroy part of a cliff and cast it into the sea. Even as its body sank beneath the raging waves, it had continued to struggle. In the present, Tao noticed a thread attached to her. Ren remarked that it still made little sense, as according to the rumors, the neuron mutant had perished after sinking into the ocean. Silpha countered, stating that the creature's body had continued moving even after death, suggesting it could still be alive. Ren argued that such post-mortem movement would be mechanical, not intelligent or coordinated like the creature before them. Despite all signs pointing to it, she maintained that it was impossible for the monster to be the neuron mutant. Lloyd, however, deduced that the creature could indeed be the neuron mutant, only now in its ghoul form. Tao noticed the monster advancing again and prepared to strike, but it produced even more threads to attack them. Meanwhile, Surya kept watch over the assault on the priest until a servant declared to his master that he preferred possessing Surya's body over the priest's. The master allowed it, instructing only that the body be put to good use. Before the servant could take full control, Babylon arrived and interrupted the possession attempt. Back with Lloyd and the others, the confrontation continued. Silpha, having discerned the enemy's attack pattern, led the three girls in evading the monster's threads. However, the creature skillfully blocked every counterstrike, using its marrow threads both defensively and offensively. With all of its limbs engaged, Ren unleashed a potent neurotoxin directly targeting its nervous system, temporarily preventing it from using its threads. She urged the others to attack before the paralysis wore off. Tao immediately struck and passed the assault to Silpha, who prepared to deliver the final blow. Silpha followed with her lion's roar ability, seemingly eliminating the monster. However, Silpha noted that in the last instant, its automatic movements had resumed. She suspected she had given it enough time to break its fall and found it unusual that the creature could control its powers so precisely. Since scourges were believed to lack such control, she concluded the situation was more dire than they had thought. The monster fled, and Silpha warned the others not to let it escape. The monster, aware it could not stand against three adventurers of their strength, recalled that its master awaited it at the church. Yet before returning, it intended to cause trouble on the surface. It promised itself it would meet these adventurers again when the time was right. Memories of its past life resurfaced, years of mistreatment and displacement until it became an ethereal, a race able to possess the bodies of the living, though only those with weak minds. It had wandered aimlessly until meeting its master, who told it of a powerful corpse from the Civil War, still wielding immense strength even in death. Granted control of the corpse's body without asking for anything in return, the ethereal first hunted those responsible for its death, and afterward devoted itself entirely to its master's will. Upon encountering Lloyd, the monster recognized him as different from others. Lloyd had noticed the threads before anyone else, and had even dared to touch one intentionally. The contact filled the monster with such despair that it was momentarily paralyzed, sensing an immense mana within the boy. Despite the fear, it attacked again, only to be blocked by a barrier. Lloyd countered, rendering the monster's automatic reflexes dormant. Lloyd intended to take the monster for study, intrigued by how it retained abilities from its living state, a rarity for a ghoul. To his surprise, the monster spoke, which prompted Grimm to suggest it was an ethereal possessing another body. Lloyd's interest deepened, and he invited the creature to come with them. The monster wept blood, unsure whether the tears were its own or those of its host. Remembering the hardships of its life, it realized that facing Lloyd was even more daunting than anything it had endured before. For the first time, it perceived a kind hand extended toward it and felt compelled to apologize for its actions. It recalled the day its master had introduced it to a stone containing a divine spell, Luma Maxima. Breaking it would eradicate both the corpse's flesh and its ethereal form instantly. Returning to the present, the monster chose to destroy the stone, disappearing from sight. Juro deduced that it had used sacred magic, an extraordinary feat for a ghoul, especially one casting the advanced spell Luma Maxima. From the settling dusk came the creature's final request, that its master be protected. Lloyd's curiosity about the being deepened further. Elsewhere, Babylon instructed Escher to take the priest to the Adventurers Guild and forbade her from summoning reinforcements, insisting that no one could defeat the being he now faced. Alone with the enemy, Babylon inquired about its nature, but the master offered no explanation, intent only on killing him. As they fought, Babylon remembered a discussion with Lloyd in which they had found one of the priests suspicious, this very enemy. Though danger loomed, Lloyd had admitted he felt no fear, perhaps because he could not fully comprehend the adversary's power. Babylon quickly realized the only way to prevail was with purifying class magic. He unleashed a flurry of radiant strikes, but was ultimately struck down, thrown to the ground in a pool of blood. The conflict had only just begun, and the clash between Lloyd and the master promised to be even greater. Yet to his surprise, Babylon suddenly appeared behind him, revealing that the last attack had struck the wrong target. Babylon's ability made his body extraordinarily flexible, allowing him to twist and contort in ways no ordinary person could. In this case, he had even twisted the interior of his body, avoiding what should have been a fatal blow. Beyond this, Babylon also utilized his bone-wising ability to enhance his strength, striking at his master with renewed power. The master noted with unease just how dangerous the boy truly was. Babylon's arms grew numb, and his stomach churned as if he were about to vomit his very insides. His mana reserves were nearly exhausted, yet he continued striking. His single purpose was clear, to ensure that Escher could escape with the priest and reach safety. In the midst of the battle, the master's claws burst forth from his back, striking Babylon and sending him crashing against the wall. The master observed him with a calculating gaze, recognizing the boy's potential as a suitable vessel. Deciding Babylon's body would make an excellent host, he resolved to kill him and claim it for his own. Meanwhile, at the guild, Katarina busied herself tending to adventurers who had taken shelter from the heavy rain. She muttered her complaints, irritated that the guild had been reduced to little more than a refuge. Her annoyance broke when another figure entered. Assuming it was another adventurer seeking cover, she looked up and was startled to see Escher herself. The young woman was visibly shaken. Katarina approached her, trying to understand what had happened, but before she could learn more, two adventurers stepped forward, eager to help. Though she had their full support, Escher's mind drifted back to the master's ominous threats. Fear silenced her, and she dismissed their concerns with a fabricated excuse, claiming the priest had only slipped in the rain. She left him to rest at the guild before hurrying away again. As soon as she stepped back into the storm, regret consumed her. She chastised herself for not asking the adventurers for help. Yet when the master's terrifying visage resurfaced in her thoughts, her fear returned. She knew they would only meet their deaths if they confronted such a creature. Her focus shifted back to Babylon. If she did not act quickly, he would perish. But what could she do? She belittled herself as she ran, reminding herself that her only skill was singing, a gift useless in battle. Rain mixed with tears as she cried out for divine aid, her mind haunted by memories of her sister mocking her devotion and questioning her worthiness to be called a holy woman. The memory crushed her until, stumbling, she collapsed into a puddle. Strong hands caught her before she fell further. Lloyd had arrived, umbrella in hand, having been caught in the storm on his way to the guild. He offered to escort her to the church, but Escher, desperate at last, pleaded with him to save Babylon. Immediately afterward, fear gripped her again, and she tried to retract her request, convinced that if Lloyd faced the master, he too would be killed. While Escher wrestled with her fear, Babylon drifted into unconsciousness and awoke in a strange white room. Accepting his state, he mused that his life had never been ideal, and that his death might simply be another inevitability. What mattered most was that Escher had escaped. As he explored, he stumbled into another vision, pulled into a place where a young woman's song filled the air. For a moment, he abandoned even his desire for drink, captivated by her voice until he realized the melody was intended to wake him. 3 days had passed since the battle. Lloyd had rescued Babylon, carrying him to Lordo's for treatment. When the boy awoke, his companions explained how close to death he had been. Healing magic had been cast upon him for over 10 hours, yet still he had not stirred. It was only through sheer effort and Escher's tireless purification that he survived. Lloyd downplayed his own role, though he reminded Babylon that without his teleportation, survival would have been impossible. Grateful for their aid, Babylon listened as Lloyd questioned him about the battle. When Babylon described the enemy's shape-shifting and his ability to wield Luxa, Juro grew irritated, unwilling to believe such divine magic could belong to one outside the church. Babylon explained that he had struck with multiple divine blows, and that none had affected the master. Lloyd noted grimly that such attacks only harm those burdened by guilt. The fact that the enemy suffered no damage meant either he truly felt justified in his actions, or his conviction was so absolute that purification could not pierce it. Either way, this enemy promised to be a formidable challenge. Later, hearing the priest's account, Lloyd deduced that the master had targeted Escher and the priests specifically, seeking to use them as vessels to infiltrate the church. Yet the full purpose behind the attacks remained unclear. Babylon admitted to encountering the enemy within the inner garden, a revelation that stirred Lloyd's suspicion. He ordered the area investigated. During this, Katerina reported her findings to the church headquarters. She presented the image of the man who had attacked Babylon and informed them he had wielded sacred magic. The priests reacted with hostility, dismissing her account as blasphemous rumor. They refused to accept that a simple monster could possess such abilities. Some even accused the governor of Lordos of fabricating lies, branding him untrustworthy. The meeting ended with demands for proof, leaving Katerina disheartened by their arrogance. Lloyd pressed forward with his own search. As the brothers broke apart the garden floor, a hidden staircase was uncovered, sealed by materials designed to block both mana and divine energy. Outraged by this secret beneath the church, Escher demanded to join the investigation. Together, they descended into the depths and discovered horrifying evidence of experimentation on living beings. The revelations shattered any remaining illusions. Beneath the sacred walls of the church lay a dark truth that could no longer be ignored. Everyone believed he would not return after the commotion he caused in the garden. While investigating, Ren noticed that one of the experiments resembled the ghouls they had once fought in the sewers. Silpha observed another specimen that possessed a claw, leading Lloyd to conclude that the man responsible had been using synthesis to create monsters. He explained that the process involved taking cells from living organisms and cultivating new limbs, possibly as part of an attempt to infuse wraiths into human bodies. Escher was in disbelief that such atrocities had taken place beneath the church. Silpha realized then that the ghouls they had fought were not genuine, but rather creatures created through experimentation, chimeras. Lloyd condemned the man's cruelty, though he could not hide his twisted excitement at the thought of seeing the result of the man's work, believing it to be the culmination of all his studies. While Silpha and Galilea agreed that the laboratory needed to be destroyed, Lloyd protested, unwilling to lose such a valuable source of research. Before they could resolve the argument, a creature suddenly attacked them. Crow immediately used his cursed speech to protect the group, and they quickly realized the creature was a Lamia. Lloyd ordered Crow not to kill her, noticing she was casting an air-class spell. He instructed Galilea to shield everyone with his web, while Crow cleared a path for him and Ren. Ren attempted to strike the Lamia, but was repelled by a powerful barrier. Galilea feared they would be unable to defeat her, yet Crow, using his recitation loop, shattered the barrier and subdued the Lamia with his cursed speech. The group was astonished by his progress, noting how much stronger he had become since learning to control his power. Lloyd examined the Lamia and discovered that she was once human, though now half of her body had transformed into that of a monster. Everyone was horrified to realize that she had been experimented on while still alive. Ren wondered if there was any way to save her, and Crow prepared to end her suffering, but Escher intervened. The Lamia, terrified, struck Escher, who understood her fear and empathized deeply, recalling her own experiences with terror. At that moment, Escher heard the faint sound of Saria playing the piano. Inspired, she began to sing for the Lamia. The others were shocked. Escher had once sung for 12 hours straight to heal Babylon, and she had long since depleted her mana. Yet her voice carried on, pure and steady. Her song soothed the Lamia, who began to recall hearing that same melody during her time in captivity. It had been her only source of comfort, even halting the man's experiments at times. Moved by the memory, the Lamia apologized for her actions, acknowledging that she was still human. Overwhelmed, she began to cry, and Escher embraced her, apologizing for not saving her sooner despite having been so close. Soon after, Albert was informed of the underground laboratory's existence. Lloyd noticed that the Lamia had forgotten her name, likely a side effect of the cruel experiments, but suspected she had once been an adventurer. Galilea agreed, noting that her ability to use magic supported that idea. The Lamia expressed sadness over her appearance, believing she could never live a normal life again, but Galilea invited her to stay with them in Lourdes, where she could live peacefully. The Lamia was overjoyed at the offer. When Lloyd asked her about the mysterious man behind the experiments, she handed him a rosary the man had left in the lab. She claimed not to know him personally, but mentioned that he harbored a deep hatred for the gods. Lloyd then gave her the research notes from the lab. Though Escher feared the notes were too dangerous, Lloyd believed they might hold the key to restoring her humanity. He explained that her body continued to function through intricate mana signatures that even he could not fully decipher, but she might one day be able to reverse the transformation. Encouraged, the Lamia accepted the notes and vowed to return to her original form. Escher, however, felt overwhelmed and quietly left the room. Galilea and Crow promised to support the Lamia, and together they decided she needed a name. Lloyd suggested calling her Lamie, which everyone accepted warmly. Later, Escher found Saria still at the church, taking a break from recital practice. Escher expressed her desire to sing alongside her, believing it was the one thing she could truly do well. Saria gladly agreed, proposing that they turn it into a grand performance. Meanwhile, Albert decided that the upcoming festival might need to be cancelled due to the growing threat. Escher became distraught at the idea, but Albert insisted that the mysterious man remained at large. As the girls played with Shiro, Sofa reprimanded them and pondered the true motive behind the experiments. The group speculated that the man intended to use his creations to sabotage the festival and assassinate the Pope. Realizing the danger, Albert concluded that the festival could not proceed safely, though he knew that canceling it would disappoint the public. Sofa searched for the man's rosary but noticed Shiro wearing it. When she tried to remove it, Escher pointed out that the one she held was made of silver, while Babylon recalled seeing the man wearing a new rosary. He assumed the man had replaced the lost one. Sofa observed that the new rosary was solid gold, a detail of great significance. The pastor explained that only the 11 bishops and the Pope were permitted to wear golden rosaries. Ren suggested the man might be a bishop, but the pastor found that impossible. Sofa reminded them that the man could freely alter his appearance, and Babylon recalled witnessing him use divine sorcery without ritual, implying he possessed a special pass. The pastor was stunned, realizing that only bishops and the Pope had access to such power. Grimm doubted the claim, but Juriel confirmed that he had originally granted the pass to the Pope, who later shared it with the bishops, just as Eloy had once allowed others to use divine sorcery. Albert then revealed that the church had rejected Babylon's testimony and refused to cancel the festival. He feared for the Pope's life, convinced that the church had already been infiltrated. With time running out before the festival, Sofa proposed separating the Pope from his bishops to watch them closely. Albert agreed that it was their best option, but stressed that they could not trust outsiders with this information. They resolved to work together to monitor the bishops and act when necessary. That evening, Bishop Anastasia intercepted a sister carrying a letter from Albert intended for the Pope. Taking it for herself, she read it with a smile. The letter revealed Albert's plan to inspect the church facilities, keeping the Pope and bishops in separate groups. Anastasia entered a hidden passage leading to the mysterious man's secret lair and informed him of Albert's plan. The man deduced that the Lamia had betrayed him and looked down at his blighted arm, the last remnant of his former body. Absorbing the arm, he regained his blighted power, declaring that nothing could stop him. It was then revealed that the destroyed laboratory had merely been one of many branches, and he still had access to the chimeras. With his preparations complete, he was ready to unleash his plan during the festival. Silphin informed the bishops that their welcome parade had been cancelled and that members of the team would instead escort them individually. Gamma reacted with anger at the idea of being separated from Gitane, but Gitane clarified that the new arrangement was part of Albert's plan to protect them after the recent attack. Silpha reassured the group that the team would keep them safe and instructed everyone to enter the carriages designated for their respective assignments. As preparations continued, Silpha approached Anastasia and informed her that she would be her escort for the day. Among the bishops, Bats displayed his usual overconfidence, believing he needed no guards and could defeat anyone who challenged him. Danny viewed Bats' boasting as pointless and considered it an empty show of pride, something Bats failed to understand. Bats grew irritated when Dan dismissed him bluntly, but Ren urged Dan to focus on leaving. Bats remained determined to continue their quarrel until Melissa forcefully dragged him toward their carriage. Meanwhile, Till hoped she would be assigned to someone handsome, but instead she was paired with the two bald bishops, Almaki and Almaki, leaving her visibly disappointed. Nearby, Rosalis recognized Babylon as the person who had previously reported the mysterious priest-like figure. Rosalis found it hard to believe Babylon suspected the man was from the church at all. Thor viewed the assumption as disrespectful, and when Rosalis questioned Babylon about any progress on the case, Babylon admitted he had no leads. Talia prepared to depart with Gammo, who noticed she was carrying a drink. She explained that it was meant to match the atmosphere of the festival, but Gammo scolded her for being careless while assigned to protective duty. At the church, the king stood with Albert, who mentioned that Gitane would arrive soon. The king welcomed the chance to see his old friend again. Albert believed that splitting up the bishops was the right strategic move, as the mysterious priest was likely hiding among them and therefore would not be able to approach the Pope. When Gitane's carriage arrived, the king greeted him warmly, expressing his anticipation. Despite the cheerful setting, Albert felt uneasy. Security seemed far too light, and the festival's prohibition on weapons left him concerned. A flashback revealed Albert's earlier discussion with the king about the mysterious priest. The king had not recognized the man and believed canceling the festival so late would cause chaos. He instructed Albert to wait until the festival ended before beginning his investigation, but permitted tighter security on the day itself. In the present, Albert silently hoped that nothing disastrous would occur, desiring only that citizens enjoy the event and return home safely. Nearby, several men admired Silpha's appearance, catching Anastasia's attention. Anastasia wondered whether Silpha might secretly be aligned with their enemies, considering the girl seemed deceptively dangerous. Silpha recalled how Anastasia had confronted her earlier about changing clothes. Silpha had insisted she had nothing else to wear, only for Anastasia to lift her skirt and discover the hidden sword she wore. Anastasia had ordered her to remove the weapon and choose a dress with a shorter skirt instead. Silpha now hoped Anastasia was not an enemy, recognizing her perceptiveness but also reminding herself that she could still function even without her sword. She worried that her mission might become more difficult, yet believed it no longer mattered, certain that nothing could stop the events already set in motion. Without warning, the ground began to shake. The crowd initially believed it was part of the performance, but Albert immediately sensed something was wrong. A giant creature emerged near the church, triggering widespread panic. Gitane observed the unfolding terror with unsettling calm, recognizing that the gate to hell had opened and that everything was progressing exactly as he intended. A flashback revealed the moment pastors visited Gitane to inform him that he was a candidate for the position of Pope. They invited him to undergo the ritual, and he agreed. To test him, they bathed him in their Luma Maxima, expecting the sacred light to reveal impurities. When the spell produced no effect, they concluded that his soul held no shadows and immediately deemed him worthy, crowning him as Pope. Yet Gitane had sensed a darkness within himself, one so deep that even divine power could not destroy it. In the present, Gitane reflected on his original plan to unleash chimeras upon the church, though Albert had already destroyed his laboratory. Nonetheless, he remained certain that his remaining forces would soon overwhelm the nation. Across the city, monsters poured out of an enormous hole, validating his belief. Albert was stunned to discover that the Pope was the true villain and regretted not protecting his father instead. Gitane resolved to eradicate all who followed divine teachings, believing that the doctrine of purity had misguided humanity. In his view, killing and stealing were acceptable as long as the intention behind them remained untainted. Juriel contacted Gitane as chaos spread, prompting Gitane to explain that he sought the descent of God onto the earth. His rampage had been an attempt to provoke divine intervention, but even his atrocities had failed to draw a response. Juriel tried to understand the cause of his corruption, but Gitane refused to speak. Seizing the moment, he captured Albert and the king. When the king noted that the image of the mysterious priest resembled Gitane's deceased son, he wondered if grief had driven him astray. Gitane ignored the question, asking instead whether those would be the king's final words. He prepared to kill him, fully intending to send the entire royal family to the heavens. However, just as he aimed to strike, everyone was suddenly transported away. Juriel announced that Gitane was about to face his master, and Lloyd appeared. Gitane remembered the chilling power he had sensed when they first met and saw the confrontation as the final step in his descent into darkness. At the royal palace, Diane was shocked to see the group suddenly materialize. The king questioned what had happened, and Albert concluded that their enemy must have disguised himself as Gitane. The king agreed and declared that the church had fallen under enemy control, ordering his soldiers to defend the civilians. On the battlefield, Gitane realized that Lloyd had been suppressing his mana to conceal his presence. He ordered Grimm and Juriel to assist the people defending the city. Juriel wished to fight Gitane, but Lloyd prevented it, knowing Juriel would stand no chance. Grimm remembered Lloyd's earlier warning that Gitane, too, had been suppressing his mana, meaning his true power rivaled that of a demon lord. Before leaving, Grimm warned Lloyd not to act recklessly. Lloyd promised caution, prompting Grimm and Juriel to rush toward the city's defense. Gitane attempted to stop them by unleashing attacks with his unholy swords, but Lloyd countered with a massive fire blast that forced Gitane into a defensive stance. Lloyd gathered mana and fired a concentrated beam of light that pierced Gitane's barriers, though Gitane managed to deflect it at the last moment. Lloyd immediately closed the distance, striking him repeatedly before summoning divine spears that impaled him. The attack carried both combatants into the sky, leaving Grimm and Juriel astonished at the overwhelming power Lloyd displayed. The monsters began rampaging, and one of them hurled a carriage across the street. It spun through the air toward a nearby civilian, but Galilea intercepted it just in time, pulling the man to safety. With Talia at his side, he prepared to confront the enemies, noting that everything was unfolding exactly as Lloyd had predicted. A flashback to several days earlier revealed Lloyd volunteering to join the recital. Albert found the request strange, especially when the entire church was preoccupied with plans to protect the Pope. Lloyd, however, assured him that everything would turn out fine, explaining that he would be useless in any direct guarding duty. Albert reluctantly realized that Lloyd was correct, believing the prince would be safe if he stayed inside the church. Grimm noticed Albert's confusion, prompting Albert to explain that the Pope himself could be the mastermind behind the current turmoil. Considering his abundance of free time and the wealth required to construct a laboratory, Lloyd then decided to wait for the impending trouble within the church and instructed everyone to rest while they could. Back in the present, Gitane finally recognized that Lloyd was far more than an ordinary prince. Using his unholy swords, he shattered his restraints. Grimm and Juriel were stunned to see Gitane still alive, but Grimm reminded Juriel that the chimeras in the town needed to be eliminated quickly. If they acted fast, they could return to support Lloyd before the situation worsened. Juriel questioned whether Lloyd required their help at all, but Grimm clarified that Gitane might be just as powerful as Lloyd, which meant their assistance could become crucial if Lloyd engaged directly with him. Gitane's ambitions, however, lay elsewhere. Declaring that he no longer cared about Juriel or the king, he expressed his desire to descend fully into darkness by killing the one he perceived as a god Lloyd. Lloyd, unfazed, simply prepared himself for the battle to come. Meanwhile, Lloyd's companions received information through messenger crows, discovering that the Pope truly was the mastermind. Ren suspected that other bishops might be involved and even theorized that Dante was a chimera due to the stitches on his face. Before she could think further, a monster appeared behind her, but a bishop purified it instantly. She thanked him and asked for his name, but his unsettling behavior triggered her instincts. Elsewhere, Anastasia launched a sudden attack on Silpha. Silpha grabbed a metal pole to defend herself, while Anastasia admitted that she had intended to decapitate her amid the chaos. Believing that her own actions made her unworthy of the position of bishop, she considered the moment appropriate for resignation. Silpha recognized that her suspicions about Anastasia had been correct all along. Galilea's group continued battling as a mage bombarded them with fireballs. They quickly noticed his overwhelming mana reserves. He introduced himself as Grimm, shocking Ganmo, who immediately recognized the name as belonging to a legendary demon who once terrorized a kingdom before being sealed away. Ganmo panicked at the idea of the seal being broken, while Galilea and Talia questioned why he was so frightened, as the mage appeared harmless despite his claims. In another part of town, Crow and Bats sprinted away from pursuing monsters. Crow wondered whether the church was holding up, and Bats assured him that Melissa would keep everything under control, though he insisted he remained more capable than her. Crow paid little attention, instead observing his messenger Crows behaving erratically in the center of town. He climbed a building to investigate and froze when he saw the cause, a double S-rank dragon rampaging through the streets. Bats caught up to him just in time to witness Crow leaping into action to confront the dragon alone. Remembering Dante's words that men should speak with their backs, Bats finally understood their meaning. Taking up his weapon, he charged forward, declaring that this battle would mark his next step toward becoming a great bishop. Elsewhere, Tao charged headfirst at a chimera, only to be grabbed and slammed into the ground with such force that the chimera assumed she had died instantly. His fighting style, Rockin', was designed to kill opponents in a single blow. The bald bishops panicked and rushed to her, but the chimera threatened to kill them next. Before he could act, Tao stood back up. The chimera discovered that he was missing a hand, which she had used to break her fall. Recognizing his technique, she identified Rockin' as a martial art that vanished after a single generation because its founder, Chakra, had never found disciples. The chimera, carrying Chakra's soul, explained that he perfected his martial arts after receiving his new body, which granted him 6 arms. Tao questioned his motivations, revealing that she trained relentlessly because she wanted to be popular. Chakra found her reasoning absurd, but she retorted that he was worse for destroying his own appearance simply for strength. Removing her hair ties, she vowed not to lose to someone who had discarded his humanity. Chakra recognized her stance as the 100-flower fist, having once fought a master who used the same style. Memories flooded Chakra's mind. After losing to the 100-flower fist's master, he was encouraged to keep training, but he refused to cling to an art that others had already dismissed. Rejected by potential disciples and told to abandon his school, he eventually gave in to despair. He took his own life and became a wraith, until Gitane offered him a new body and a renewed chance to prove his strength. Tao surged forward with incredible speed, delivering a powerful blow that snapped Chakra back into the present. She continued her relentless assault, ripping off his limbs as the battle progressed. Realizing he was still no match for the 100-flower fist, Chakra finally fell. The bishop celebrated her triumph, but acknowledged the brutal difficulty of the fight. As his body began collapsing, Chakra asked Tao for her thoughts on Rockin'. She praised his skill and even pointed out that he was still attempting to throw her despite his defeat. Overwhelmed, Chakra shed tears, realizing that all he had ever wanted was approval. Back with Galilea, the mage continued attacking. Talia discovered her powers were ineffective against the chimeras, leaving her and Galilea questioning how to defeat the creatures. Galilea instructed the bishops to continue protecting the church while Talia supported him with divine sorcery. He prepared to restrain the chimeras with his web, but the mage laughed and insisted it would not work, claiming again that he was the legendary Grimm. Talia dismissed his act, stating he was merely an imposter, though Galilea wondered if the cute and harmless Grimm they knew was actually the fake. Before the mage could attack again, a mysterious boy appeared and kicked his head clean off. The mage, now panicking, recognized the boy as the real Grimm. The boy unleashed an enormous beam that annihilated the remaining chimeras. As everyone stared in shock, he expressed disappointment that the wraith was not even a demon. He instructed Galilea to purify it before flying away. Talia questioned the wraith, who admitted he was simply a mage who admired Grimm. Realizing he had lied from the beginning, Talia immediately purified him. The group then contemplated the truth that the boy they had just witnessed was indeed the real Grimm. Gitane clashed with Lloyd, growing even more thrilled because he couldn't figure out Lloyd's limits, though he still believed his own strength gave him the upper hand. At the same time, Rosalis tried to sever a pig's head, but its hide was far too tough. Thor and Babylon stepped in to help, yet the pig instantly regenerated. They soon realized that defeating it was impossible, as its body kept restoring itself no matter how much damage they dealt, and it became even sturdier the more they attacked. The creature revealed that it was a farm orc but admitted that it didn't actually understand how its body functioned. Babylon concluded that it wasn't a chimera. The orc punched him, sending him flying through multiple houses, leaving Babylon wondering why he kept suffering so many beatings. Just as the creature was about to finish him off, Babylon questioned why it hated humans so much, wanting to understand its emotions. Thor also wished to hear its story, believing they might guide it onto a better path. Hearing this, the orc decided to reveal everything. In a flashback, the pig was created by an alchemist who proudly called it his masterpiece because its meat would never run out. He sliced it into pieces, but its body regenerated and grew even larger. The alchemist believed it could end world hunger and named it Mega Meat. The creature felt happy, thinking it could be useful to people. However, when the alchemist tasted the meat, he found it terrible and concluded no one would ever eat it. Mega Meat became furious upon hearing this. Overwhelmed by rage, he set the lab on fire and fled. Every night, he forced people to taste his meat, but everyone vomited because the flavor was unbearably bad. Mega Meat fell into despair, believing he existed solely to be eaten yet tasted so awful that even maggots rejected him. One day, Gutane found him crying, used his hand to eat the meat, and found it remarkable because he could feel its regenerative properties, though he admitted the taste was odd. Gitane told Mega Meat that his ability wasn't meant for humans and suggested using it to make humans suffer instead, insisting they deserved it for treating him like livestock. Back in the present, Mega Meat declared that he would have his revenge because humans had condemned him as inedible, but Babylon remembered how he and his guild members often went hungry because they couldn't afford meals. He said he would have gladly eaten Mega Meat if they had met earlier. The creature answered that Babylon wouldn't like him once he tasted him, but promised to turn him into a delicious pork dish. Babylon prepared to cook the meat, but Rosalis was anxious because of the strange purple aura surrounding it. Thor pointed out that they had no other option but to eat it. Babylon discovered that the meat was as hard as steel, and Mega Meat assumed Babylon would fail since it was too tough. But when Babylon touched it, the meat unexpectedly softened. Babylon apologized for attacking him, and Mega Meat wrapped himself in breading, stunned that he was allowing Babylon to cook him. Babylon got ready to fry him, though Mega Meat anticipated another issue. The meat gave off an overpowering stench that he believed would suffocate the entire building. Surprisingly, Babylon managed to fry it without any trouble. He presented the dish to the bishops, calling it a pork cutlet. They admitted that it looked delicious, and Mega Meat told them to try it, promising he would change his ways if they didn't vomit afterward. He suspected Babylon had simply trapped the odor inside a thick layer of batter. The bishops felt nervous about gagging but decided to take a bite. They were astonished by how good it tasted, imagining joyful scenes in their minds as they savored its juicy flavor. They said it tasted incredible, and they couldn't get enough. Mega Meat couldn't believe it and assumed they were lying, but they insisted it was genuinely delicious. Mega Meat asked Babylon what trick he used. Babylon revealed he had purified the meat before cooking it. He explained that he knew Mega Meat had always been a good soul who wanted to help people, but after being repeatedly rejected, scum had accumulated inside him as he sank deeper into despair. Everyone tasted the meat, and all found it delicious. Mega Meat burst into tears, realizing he had finally been accepted. A girl thanked him for the meal, and he told her to share it with everyone in the shelter. Rosalis, however, wanted to use the meat to gain followers, so he decided to adopt Mega Meat. But Mega Meat instead asked Babylon to purify him. Rosalis warned that he would lose his regeneration powers since they came from his resentment and hatred. Megameat replied that it didn't matter if he became a normal pig, because he wanted Babylon to eat the best part of him after his death. Babylon used his purification spell, turning him back to a normal creature. Megameat noted that he wanted to fill the stomach of the person who understood him. He transformed into a small, adorable pig and tried to jump into the fireplace, but Babylon stopped him, realizing he couldn't bring himself to eat him. Meanwhile, Silpha blocked Anastasia's attacks and even pushed her back. Anastasia was impressed that Silpha could defend herself with only a candlestick, but remarked that Silpha was nothing compared to her own master. Silpha wanted to learn more about Anastasia's master. Anastasia, aware of Silpha's reputation as an adventurer, asked why she left her occupation to become a maid. Silpha explained she had met the person she wanted to stay with. Anastasia was shocked, but realized that both of them were fighting for their masters. Anastasia then used divine sorcery to create an illusion. Silpha suddenly found herself surrounded by giants and, believing them to be real, struggled to fend them off with her candlestick. She clung to her amulet, waiting for the moment Anastasia lowered her guard. As Anastasia observed Silpha evading the giant's blows, she acknowledged that Silpha was noble and beautiful, while she considered herself the opposite, ugly and tainted. Anastasia remembered how her master told her to leave if she didn't want to follow him, yet she chose to stay by his side. Seeing Silpha's candlestick break, Anastasia prepared to strike the final blow. But Silpha suddenly activated her amulet, summoning a Luxus sword that allowed her to overpower Anastasia. She used her sword technique to finish the fight, but her Luxa vanished afterward. Anastasia wondered why Silpha had spared her life, realizing Silpha had intentionally dulled her blade. Silpha explained that Lloyd had given her a marble, allowing her to manifest Luxa, knowing the church would confiscate her real sword. She described her master as wise and heroic, though she admitted to scolding him sometimes because he often blundered. She added that he also had secrets, and she would wait until he was ready to share them. Then she realized she was completely drained of mana, shocked that creating the Luxus sword had used it all. Anastasia said she could never bring herself to rebuke her own master and believed he wanted someone to stop him, yet she knew her voice would never reach him. She explained that his heart was clouded with darkness because of something from his past, and she felt powerless to help him. Silpha told her she had no right to judge her, but Anastasia hoped that through this battle, perhaps a single voice might one day reach her master's heart. Escher and Saria rode Shiru to the piano, where they saw the city engulfed in flames. Saria urged Escher to prepare for their performance despite the chaos. As the dragon continued its rampage, Bats shielded Crow and implored him to stop using his powers, which were clearly taking a toll on his body. Crow, however, saw a boy about to be crushed and, using his cursed speech, managed to stop the dragon momentarily, allowing Bats to save the child. Reaching his limit, Crow collapsed, unresponsive to Bats' attempts to talk to him. Meanwhile, Dante was observed smoking during the battle. Ren, who had previously poisoned him, wondered if he was a bad guy. But the bishop she had poisoned insisted that Dante needed help. Dante questioned her about who was responsible for the devastation. Though initially unsure how to answer, she decided to trust him and revealed that Gitane was behind everything. Returning to the main conflict, Lloyd blocked Gitane's sword with his barrier. Realizing that Gitane used purifying-type sorcery in his attacks, Lloyd noted the symbols etched on Gitane's swords. As he flew away to dodge the swords, he understood that Gitane was specifying what he wanted them to purify. Lloyd launched a fireball, and Gitane swiftly modified one of his swords, using it to purify the incoming magic. Lloyd realized the symbol on Gitane's sword dictated its purification target, but it took a few seconds to change the symbol, and the specification of the magic to be purified had to be precise. Lloyd also noticed that Gitane could only use 3 symbols simultaneously, yet he still found Gitane's ability to change the mana signatures of the gods intriguing. Bats instructed the saved boy to run to the shelter where his mother was waiting. The dragon attempted to crush Crow, but Bats saved him just in time. Bats informed Crow that the civilians had been evacuated, revealing that Crow had used his powers to save them despite his terrible condition. Bats realized the dragon was laughing at them and, summoning his divine weapon to fight, was easily punched away. He was angered by the dragon's mockery of everything Crow had endured. As he struggled to get back up and the dragon prepared to seize Crow, Talia and Silpha suddenly arrived to save him. Bald bishops rushed to Crow's side to heal him, but they informed Bats that Crow had already died. The dragon prepared to blast the girls with its energy breath, but they attacked it with their skills, causing the attack to miss them. Silpha noticed Talia's injured hand, but Talia assured her she would be fine, stressing that they must defeat the dragon to save everyone. A flashback revealed the dragon's birth and its immediate realization that it was a slave to Geisarme. It believed its sole purpose was to serve him, remaining loyal and helping him reach Lourdes. However, when Guisarme finally obtained Jade's body, he told the dragon it was no longer needed and discarded it. As the dragon faced its end, Gitane stumbled upon its body. Anastasia noted that a demon lord was within Lourdes and believed Gitane could defeat it with his divine sorcery. The dragon wondered why they were not afraid, as they were in Guisarme's territory. Gitane noted that it was impossible to purify the demon lord's heart, since the hearts of monsters were not tainted, and they meant no harm when committing evil acts. He approached the dragon, which recognized him as its new master, and Gitane turned it into a chimera, instructing it to use its new body to find its true nature. The dragon realized that over half its body had been replaced with different parts, yet its consciousness remained intact. Gitane invited it to join him if it had nowhere else to go, mentioning he was preparing for a grand event. He admitted, however, that he was also lost, unsure of what to do after achieving his goal. Returning to the present, the dragon noted that it was beginning to understand its true nature and used its giant arm to attack Tao. Silpha realized it was about to finish her off and used her sword skill to cut its hand, but the dragon smashed her to the ground, noting it was starting to have fun. It observed bats begging the bishops to save Crow and noted that their expressions were amusing. When the dragon prepared to destroy the shelter, panic erupted. Tao and bats tried to stop it but were easily knocked down, and the people in the shelter realized their imminent doom. Bats screamed for help, even if it was from a devil, and Grim suddenly punched the dragon away. Everyone was surprised to see him. Jiriel approached the bishops, telling Grim he would focus on healing Crow. The dragon freaked out at the sight of Grim. The girls wondered who he was, and he introduced himself as a wandering adventurer. When they commented on his weird horns, he explained they were just accessories. It was learned that Jiriel had told him to disguise himself as a human to avoid being mistaken for a monster. The dragon tried to grab him, but Grim easily broke its hand and assured everyone that Crow would be fine since Jiriel was healing him, vowing that Crow would not die. Grim asked Tao if there were still civilians in the area, and she confirmed they had already been evacuated. Grim began attacking the dragon, mocking it as he beat it up. He mentioned hearing it laugh while attacking his friends. He stated he knew a black dragon couldn't reach the human realm alone and deduced it had been abandoned by its master. However, he expressed no pity, noting that the weak perish in the netherworld, and the dragon had caused chaos in the city. Finding the dragon pathetic, he offered it a chance to run away, but it refused, preparing to attack him with its energy breath. As Grim prepared to use his skill, the dragon noted his kindness, knowing he was still giving it a chance to escape. Yet, it refused to turn back, wanting to die as a dragon. It unleashed its energy breath, and Grim used his Arctis Obscura to overpower it. As the dragon turned to dust, it recalled Gitane, giving his chimera a sphere with Luma Maxima, telling them to use it if they wished to pass on. Gitane had explained that using it was not a betrayal, as he did not even consider them as comrades. The dragon had chosen not to use it, and was grateful that Gitane had given it a chance to die fighting. Grim consumed the dragon, noting that he had grown stronger by absorbing its mana, but still felt he was not strong enough to defeat a demon lord. Jiriel joined him, confirming that he had saved Crow, but was so exhausted he could barely move. Grim concluded that the people should now be safe and that they should go above the clouds to join Lloyd and assist him against Gitane. Upon witnessing the destruction of the Arctis Obscura, Gitane realizes his initial chimeras have been defeated. However, he immediately counters by using his 10 Commandments skill, which drops several eggs into the city. One of these eggs lands directly in a shelter, and an S-rank chimera emerges, causing everyone inside to panic. Gitane mentions that all of his chimeras are equally powerful. Lloyd considers using his teleportation spell to eliminate the threat, but Gitane begins attacking him relentlessly, knowing that Lloyd cannot use his magic if he is unable to focus. The situation worsens as one of the chimeras knocks Galilea down and removes his web, which allows the monsters to pour into the city. Talia realizes that this chimera is even stronger than the one they previously defeated, leading Galilea to suggest a retreat, as he believes they cannot win. In the shelter, the desperate people run to the door and beg the guards to open it. Katrina explains that they cannot leave because of the monsters outside, but a civilian argues that staying means being slaughtered by the chimera. As the beast prepares to attack Katrina from behind, injured adventurers intervene to save her. They urge her to escape while they hold it back, leaving everyone to wonder if God has abandoned them. Gitane continues his assault on Lloyd, who is still unable to find the opening for his teleportation spell. Gitane mentions that he does not believe in God and asks Lloyd if he truly thinks he is worthy of such a title. Nearby, Lloyd's friends prepare to fight the remaining chimeras, though they are already exhausted. A chimera approaches Anastasia, who believes she is about to meet her end. Gitane reveals that his goal is to conquer the country and change its religion, as he believes everyone worships a god that does not exist. He notes that such a goal cannot be achieved without sacrifices. Suddenly, Escher and Saria start performing. Escher uses divine sorcery to increase the range of the music so that it reaches everyone in the city. Although the spell has no direct power to harm anyone, Escher's voice helps the people calm down, and the chimeras are stunned as they listen. Gitane pauses as he remembers his past, and Lloyd realizes this is his chance to strike. He uses his teleportation spell to eliminate the chimeras, mentioning that he has no interest in Gitane's past, only his magic. Lloyd expresses his intent to capture him alive and shows Gitane the severed chimera heads, noting that Gitane will never understand the true depths of sorcery before declaring the start of the final round. Dante tells Ren that the situation has shifted, but he finds the song dangerous because the chimera's heads began exploding as soon as it started playing. He mentions that he knows who is responsible for the chaos and intends to kill all the monsters. When a chimera attacks him, Dante uses his divine sorcery to cut it into pieces. He decides to look for Escher, and Ren chooses to go with him, wondering why he began butchering the chimeras only after learning about Gitane. Dante acknowledges that Ren has been looking after the civilians and tells her she is more useful than the bishop she is carrying, suggesting she should join the clergy. Ren declines, but Dante reveals his preference for people with secrets, as a touch of darkness is what makes them human. As he walks away, Ren realizes he is just like Jade and that he is determined to stop Gitane, wishing he had sensed the darkness in him before he became the Pope. A flashback reveals that Gitane once had a happy life with his family and used to sing for his son, who enjoyed the music despite Gitane's terrible voice. He began singing in the church while casting divine sorcery on the faithful. Jiriel eventually spoke to him, admitting a hatred for his voice but acknowledging that people relied on him. Consequently, Jiriel granted Gitane the ability to use divine sorcery without a ritual. After becoming a bishop, Gitane met a thug who challenged him to a purification. Gitane used his Lux spell to teach the man a lesson, telling him not to rely on purification since he could still overcome his own inner darkness. That thug was Dante, who began dressing like Gitane after the incident and eventually became his best friend. Despite arguing with the king over political issues, Gitane was dedicated to his country. One day, Gitane found Anastasia outside his house. Seeing she was malnourished, he invited her inside. Upon entering, she mentioned her father told her to wait outside. Gitane then realized his family had been killed. He found a man eating the food in his house and felt a surge of hatred, wondering why God had not protected his family. He questioned his service to God and finally resolved to purify the man. However, the man showed no repentance and continued to eat. Gitane continued to use his glow spell until the man suddenly starved to death. Gitane then realized the man's actions were pure in their own way, as he had only killed to feed himself. This led Gitane to question his faith, wondering if people with pure hearts were actually monsters, as purity of intent could excuse anything. Although he told his friends he was fine because of his faith, the response made him feel sick. Despite being called a saint and being purified by priests before becoming pope, the darkness inside him remained. He came to believe he was not evil and planned to change the country's religion as a matter of righteousness. Back in the present, Lloyd mentions that he has had enough of Gitane's story, as it was so depressing it made the world feel black and white. Gitane assumes Lloyd is acting like a god who won't listen to reason, but Lloyd suddenly smashes his head. While the people enjoy Escher's performance and Thor believes the song made the chimera's heads explode, Babylon knows Lloyd was responsible. Babylon hears static in the song and realizes Escher is pushing herself to the limit, hoping she does not fail, since her voice is keeping the people's spirits intact. As chimeras try to stop Escher, Shiro tears them to pieces, hoping for a rainbow after the battle. Gitane screams in pain while Lloyd listens to the music, thinking Escher and Saria are doing a great job. Lloyd mentions he wanted to show Gitane something before suddenly cutting off his arm. He tells Gitane to listen to the music as Gitane's other arm suddenly explodes. Gitane wonders if Lloyd is using teleportation, but he knows there is normally a delay with that technique. Lloyd explains he is using concealment while at a full sprint, making his magic invisible and extremely fast. He blasts Gitane with ice and fire magic. Realizing he cannot react in time, Gitane uses his Blight automatic defense threads to dodge an explosion. However, Lloyd suddenly appears above him with a meteor. Gitane barely manages to block it, realizing Lloyd can launch multiple attacks simultaneously. He tries to focus, but Escher's voice distracts him, allowing Lloyd to finally stab him with the 7 goddesses.